I awaken to the subtle shift of darkness. Not to the call of birds, nor to the bustle of servants, but to that ineffable change in the air that marks the threshold between night and dawn. My eyes open to the dim outlines of my chamber, a modest room within the sprawling estate of Lord Matsumoto, my daimyo. The ceiling above me is low, wooden beams crossing in precise intervals, each one familiar to me after years of waking to their silent presence. The tatami mats beneath my futon release their faint, earthy scent as I slowly rise from my slumber. My breathing is measured, deliberate, as practiced as my sword technique. In and out, a steady rhythm against the quietude of early morning. For a moment, I remain still, listening. The estate sleeps, yet not entirely. There is the distant shuffle of kitchen servants preparing the day's first meal, the occasional quiet footfall of a night watchman completing his final rounds. The world is suspended in that delicate balance between rest and activity. My hand slides across the smooth surface of the floor until it finds the familiar texture of my obi, neatly folded beside my sleeping mat. The silk feels cool against my fingertips, a momentary sensation that grounds me in the physical world. Today, like all days, has its duties, its obligations, and I must rise to meet them. With practiced efficiency, I fold my futon, movements flowing like water over stone, unhurried yet purposeful. The heavy quilted bedding yields to my touch, collapsing into neat, ordered rectangles. I place it in the alcove designated for it, beside a simple scroll painting of mountains shrouded in mist. The painting was a gift from my father when I first entered Lord Matsumoto's service, a reminder of the heights to which a samurai might aspire, and the clarity of vision necessary to reach them. The wooden floor is cool beneath my feet as I cross to the small shrine in the corner of my chamber. Here, a single candle sits unlit, waiting. I kneel before it, reaching for the flint striker kept nearby. 3 strikes and the spark catches, illuminating my small space with a gentle, flickering glow. The flame dances, casting long shadows across the shrine's modest offerings. A bowl of rice from yesterday's meal, a small cup of now tepid tea, a single chrysanthemum blossom floating in water. I bow my head, offering thanks to my ancestors, seeking their guidance for the day ahead. Their presence feels particularly close in these quiet morning moments, as if the veil between worlds thins with the approaching dawn. My prayer is not one of words but of intentions. Honor, loyalty, courage, wisdom. The virtues of Bushido flow through my mind like a stream, clear and constant. Rising from my prayers, I move to the wooden chest that holds my clothing. The lid makes a hushed sound as I lift it, not a creak, for I keep the hinges well oiled, but a soft displacement of air. Inside, my garments lie folded with precision. The white undergarments, the hakama in the deep blue of Lord Matsumoto's household, the kimono of sturdy cotton for daily wear. I dress methodically, layer by layer, the fundoshi first, wrapped with practiced hands. Then the white under kimono, cool against my skin. The outer kimono follows, its weight familiar across my shoulders. The hakama requires more attention, pleated carefully, tied with a series of practiced knots. Each movement is deliberate, each fold exact. There is meditation in this ritual, a focusing of the mind through the discipline of the body. As I dress, the first true light of dawn begins to filter through the rice paper of my window. It comes not as a sudden brightness, but as a gradual illumination, transforming the grays of my chamber into subtle browns and blues. The grain of the wooden posts becomes visible, each one telling its story through knots and whorls. Next comes my hair, pulled back tightly and secured in the traditional top knot of the samurai class. The comb, made of boxwood, and passed down through generations, glides through my hair with minimal resistance. I take pride in this small detail, that even my hair demonstrates discipline and order. Only when my appearance is complete do I turn my attention to my swords. They rest on their stand in the most honored place in my chamber, beneath the alcove where a single spray of cherry blossoms sits in a ceramic vase, symbolic of beauty and the ephemeral nature of life. I approach them with reverence, the katana and wakizashi, soul of the samurai. My fingers trace the intricate pattern of the tsuka, the handle wrapped in silk over ray skin. The guard, the tsuba, is iron, worked into a design of waves breaking against rocks, representing resilience against all forces. With slow, deliberate movements, I lift the katana from its stand. The weight is an extension of my arm, familiar as my own heartbeat. I draw it partially from its scabbard, just enough to inspect the blade in the growing light. The steel catches the dawn, reflecting it back at me, pure, untarnished. I can see my own eye in its polished surface, dark and focused. Satisfied, I return the blade to its sheath and secure both swords at my waist, the obi holding them firmly in place. The weight at my hip completes me, balances me. Without them, I would feel as though missing a limb. A soft knock at my door indicates the arrival of a servant with a basin of water for my morning ablutions. I grant permission to enter with a single word, and a young boy slides the door open, keeping his eyes downcast as he places the ceramic basin on its stand. Steam rises from the water, carrying the faint scent of the herbs that have been steeped in it, mint for clarity of mind. "Will the Lord require anything else?" the boy asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," I reply. "You may go." The door closes with the same hushed precision with which it opened. I move to the basin, cupping the warm water in my hands and bringing it to my face. The heat is pleasant against my skin, washing away the last vestiges of sleep. I repeat this 3 times, then dry myself on a small towel of unbleached cotton. From outside, the first birds begin their morning songs, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. The day is truly beginning now. Soon, the estate will be fully awake, and my duties will commence in earnest. I take a final moment of stillness, centering myself for what lies ahead. Today, like all days, will test my resolve, my skill, my adherence to the way of the warrior. And like all days, I will meet its challenges with the composure and dignity befitting my station. With a deep breath, I slide open the door to my chamber and step out into the corridor beyond. The polished wooden floor reflects the strengthening light from the open courtyard ahead. There, I can see other samurai beginning their morning routines, some heading to the training grounds, others to their assigned posts. The day calls, and I answer, moving forward with measured steps toward the training ground, where the second phase of my day will begin, the practice that hones both body and spirit for the service of my Lord. The next part of my day, the quiet ritual of morning preparation. I returned to my quarters after a brief visit to the main hall, where I paid my morning respects to Lord Matsumoto. Though our exchange was brief, a simple bow and acknowledgement, it fulfilled the first duty of my day. Now, as I slide the shoji door closed behind me, I am enveloped once more in the tranquil solitude of my chamber. The soft light of early morning filters through the rice paper windows, casting gentle patterns across the tatami floor. The light has changed since I first awoke. No longer the tentative gray of pre-dawn, but a warm amber that speaks of the day's true beginning. Dust motes dance in the slanted beams, rising and falling in invisible currents of air. My armor stands on its wooden frame in the corner of the room, awaiting my attention. It is not a day that requires full battle dress, but certain pieces will accompany me during training, and all must be maintained with unwavering diligence. I approach the stand with measured steps, appreciating the silence that envelops me. The only sounds are the distant calls of birds in the estate gardens and the occasional soft footfall of servants passing in the exterior corridor. I kneel before my armor, placing a small, lacquered tray beside me. Upon it rests a cloth of fine silk, a small container of choji oil, and various tools for maintenance, each in its proper place, each with its purpose. The ritual of care that I am about to undertake is as old as the way of the samurai itself, passed down through generations of warriors who understood that to neglect one's equipment was to neglect one's duty. First, I attend to the dew, the chest plate made of overlapping iron plates bound with silk cords of deep indigo, the color of Lord Matsumoto's house. My fingers trace the intricate lacing pattern, checking for any looseness or wear. Finding none, I take the silk cloth, applying a small amount of oil, and begin to polish the metal surface with slow, circular motions. The oil releases a subtle fragrance, cloves and something earthy beneath, that fills my nostrils with each breath. The scent has become synonymous in my mind with preparation, with readiness. As I work, the metal warms beneath my touch, its surface gradually taking on a subdued luster that speaks not of vanity, but of respect. Each piece receives the same meticulous attention. The sode that protect my shoulders, the kote that guard my forearms, the sunite for my shins. Though I will not wear the full suit today, Each component must be maintained, ready for when it's called upon. There is a meditative quality to this work. Each movement deliberate, each piece tended to with equal care. The light shifts subtly as I work, the angle of the sun changing, casting new patterns through the rice paper screens. Time passes unmarked, except for these gradual transformations of light and shadow. There is no hurry in these moments, no rushing toward the day's obligations. This too is duty, this careful preparation, this mindful present. When the armor is tended to, I turn my attention to my most sacred possession, my katana. I move to the stand where it rests alongside its companion, the wakizashi. Though I wear them when moving about the estate, here in the privacy of my quarters, they wait on their stand, deserving of a proper place of honor. I kneel before the sword stand and, with practiced movements, remove the katana. Its weight is familiar, an extension of my arm, my will. I hold it for a moment in silent appreciation, then place it before me on a clean cloth of white silk. With reverent care, I remove the sajo, the cord that secures the sword in its scabbard, unwinding it methodically and placing it beside the sword. The tsuka, the handle, is wrapped in white silk over rayskin, the pattern creating a precise grid that ensures a firm grip in even the most demanding circumstances. I inspect it carefully for any signs of wear, for any looseness in the wrapping. Finding it sound, I move on. Drawing the blade partially from its saya, its scabbard, I examine the steel in the morning light. The blade was forged by Master Masamune himself, a gift from Lord Matsumoto upon the completion of my first decade in his service. The metal seems to come alive in the light, the heimin, the tempered line along the edge, revealing the boundary between the harder cutting edge and the more flexible spine. I slide the blade fully from its sheath, the soft whisper of steel against wood filling the quiet room. Now exposed, the full length of the katana catches the light, revealing the subtle grain pattern in the steel, like ripples in still water, like clouds across a winter sky. This is not merely a weapon, it is a work of art, a physical manifestation of the samurai's soul. With the same oil-infused cloth I used for my armor, I wipe the blade from the habaki, the collar near the guard, to the kisaki, the point. No speck of dust, no trace of moisture can be allowed to remain, for even the smallest imperfection could lead to tarnish, to weakness. 3 times I pass the cloth along the length of the steel, each stroke deliberate, my breath steady and controlled. When I am satisfied with its condition, I apply a minute amount of choji oil, just enough to protect without excess. The blade's surface now bears a subtle sheen, not ostentatious but dignified, ready for service. With the same careful attention, I return the sword to its scabbard, the blade sliding home with a satisfying click as the habaki meets the mouth of the saya. I rewrap the sajeo, my fingers moving through the familiar pattern without conscious thought, years of practice guiding them through the motions. The ritual complete, I return the swords to their stand, bowing slightly in acknowledgement of their significance. A samurai's swords are more than tools. They are his honor made tangible, his duty given form. To care for them is to care for the very principles that guide my life. Now I must attend to my appearance for the day ahead. From a chest in the corner of the room, I remove my training garments, a kimono of sturdy cotton in the deep blue of Lord Matsumoto's house, and a hakama of the same color but in a slightly heavier fabric to withstand the rigors of practice. I change methodically, folding my sleeping yukata with precise movements and placing it in its designated space within the chest. The training kimono settles across my shoulders with familiar weight, the sleeves falling to just the right length. The hakama requires more attention, each of the 7 pleats representing a virtue of Bushido. I fold them carefully, ensuring each is of equal depth, then secure the garment with its ties, one in front, one behind. A small mirror of polished metal hangs on one wall, not for vanity, but for propriety. I check my appearance briefly, ensuring that I present myself as befits a samurai of Lord Matsumoto's household. My hair is already secured in the traditional top knot, and my face bears the composed expression expected of one in my position. Satisfied with my preparations, I secure my daisho, the paired long and short swords, at my waist. Their weight is comforting, balancing. With them at my side, I am complete, ready to face whatever challenges the day may bring. I slide open the shoji door, stepping out into the covered walkway that connects my quarters to the main buildings of the estate. The air outside is fresher, carrying the scent of pine from the surrounding forest and the subtle fragrance of early plum blossoms from the inner gardens. Other samurai move along the walkways, each intent on their own duties. We exchange nods of acknowledgement, brief, respectful. The morning quiet still prevails, though it will soon give way to the sounds of training, of instruction, of the estate's daily rhythms. I make my way toward the dojo, the training hall where I will join my fellow warriors in practice. My steps are measured, unhurried, each foot placed with purpose upon the polished wooden boards of the walkway. The peace of my morning preparations stays with me, a centered calmness that I carry like an invisible shield. As I approach the dojo, I can hear the first sounds of activity, the shuffle of feet on the wooden floor, the occasional sharp command of an instructor. The day's training awaits, the next phase in the endless cycle of preparation, practice, and service that defines the way of the samurai. The next part of my day, the training ground. I slide open the wooden doors of the dojo with measured reverence. The familiar scent of polished wood, sweat, and incense greets me as I step across the threshold. Though I have entered this sacred space countless times, I never fail to feel a sense of quiet awe. This is where the way of the sword is preserved and perfected, where theory becomes muscle memory, where discipline transforms into art. The morning light streams through the high windows, casting long rectangles of gold across the immaculate wooden floor. Dust motes dance in these beams, swirling in gentle eddies as they catch the light. The dojo is already alive with activity, though not with chaos or haste. Other samurai move through the space with deliberate grace, some performing solitary kata, others engaged in paired practice with wooden bakken. I remove my sandals at the entrance, placing them neatly alongside those of my fellow warriors. The smooth wooden floor feels cool against my feet as I pad silently toward the kamidana, the small shrine at the front of the training hall. Before beginning my practice, I must pay proper respect to the space and to those who have walked this path before me. I kneel before the shrine, the familiar pressure of my hakama against my knees, and bow deeply, forehead nearly touching the floor. I remain in this position for several breaths, clearing my mind of external concerns, dedicating myself to the practice ahead. When I rise, I feel centered, present, my awareness sharpened, yet paradoxically more at ease. Moving to the weapon rack along the eastern wall, I select a bakken that feels right in my hands today. The wooden practice sword is heavier than my katana, intentionally so to build strength and control. Its surface is smooth from years of use, the grip worn to a patina that speaks of countless hours of practice. I test its weight, rotating my wrists slightly, feeling how it extends my reach, how it balances in my grasp. Master Takayama notices my arrival and acknowledges me with a subtle nod. Though in his 6th decade, he moves with the fluidity of a man half his age, his form perfected through a lifetime dedicated to the sword. He is leading several younger samurai through a basic kata, their movements synchronized but still lacking the ineffable quality that separates mere technique from true mastery. I find an empty space near the eastern corner of the dojo and begin my own warm-up exercises. First, I stand in perfect stillness, feet shoulder-width apart, bokken held at my side. I focus on my breathing, in through the nose, deep into the belly, out through the mouth. With each breath, I feel more rooted to the floor beneath me, more connected to the wooden sword in my hand. Slowly, I raise the bakken above my head, then bring it down in a precise vertical cut, stopping just as the tip reaches waist height. The movement is controlled, deliberate. I repeat this basic strike, the foundational Jodan Saburi, 10 times, each cut identical to the last. There is no rushing, no impatience. The purpose is not quantity but quality, not speed but precision. The sound of my breath mingles with the similar exhalations of the other practitioners, creating a gentle rhythm that underlies all movement in the dojo. Beyond this, I hear the controlled tap of wood against wood as partners practice their strikes and blocks, the soft shuffle of feet adjusting position on the polished floor, the occasional word of correction or encouragement from Master Takayama. After completing my solo warm-up, I catch the eye of Noburo, a fellow samurai of similar rank and experience. Without words, we understand the invitation to practice together. He approaches with his own bakken, and we bow to each other, a gesture not merely of courtesy but of mutual respect and trust. We are about to engage in simulated combat, and though the swords are wooden, the potential for injury remains. The bow acknowledges this risk and the care we will take with each other. We begin with basic exchanges: strike and block, advance and retreat. Our movements are measured, almost ceremonial in their precision. This is not a contest, but a conversation conducted through the language of swordsmanship. I strike from the high position. Noburo blocks and counters with a cut to my side, which I in turn deflect. The rhythm of our practice deepens, our breathing synchronizes. Though we are engaged in simulated combat, I feel a profound sense of calm descending upon me. My awareness expands. I am conscious of the weight of the bakken in my hands, the position of my feet on the floor, the subtle shifts in Noburo's posture that telegraph his next move, the quality of light in the dojo, the sounds of other practitioners around us. Yet none of this distracts me. Rather, it all becomes part of a unified field of perception, simultaneously detailed and holistic. Sweat begins to bead on my forehead as we continue, but I pay it no mind. The physical exertion is purposeful, purifying. Each movement flows into the next, each technique building upon what came before. We are not merely repeating memorized forms, but engaging in a living tradition, one that responds to the immediate reality of two bodies in space, two minds in silent communication. Master Takayama approaches to observe our practice. His presence is felt before it is seen, an intensity of focus that influences the very air around him. He watches silently for several exchanges, then makes a small adjustment to my elbow position during a horizontal cut. The correction is minimal but transformative, allowing the force to flow more naturally from my center through the blade. "The sword is not in your hands," he says quietly. "It is in your hara, your center." The hands merely guide its intention. I absorb this teaching, not just intellectually, but physically. On my next cut, I focus on generating the movement from my core rather than my arms. The difference is subtle, yet profound. The cut feels both more powerful and less effortful, as if the bakken itself knows the path it must travel. Master Takayama nods once, satisfied, and moves on to observe other practitioners. His brief intervention lingers with me, not as a correction, but as an invitation to deeper understanding. Noburo and I continue our practice, gradually increasing the complexity of our exchanges. We move through the 8 basic cuts of kenjutsu, varying rhythm and approach. We practice techniques for different distances: isoku, 1 step away; nisoku, 2 steps; toisoku, sword tip distance. Each range requires different timing, different awareness. Time seems to both expand and contract in the dojo. Though we have been practicing for what must be close to an hour, it feels both longer and shorter. Longer in the richness of experience, shorter in how quickly attention has transformed duration. The slanting rectangles of sunlight have shifted position on the floor, marking the passage of time in their silent, steady progression. Eventually, Master Takayama signals for all practice to cease. We lower our bakken and stand at attention as he leads us through the formal closing ritual. We kneel in a perfect line, bakken placed respectfully at our sides. A moment of silence descends upon the dojo. Deeper than the absence of sound, it is a positive silence, full with shared focus and mutual respect. After the final bow, Noburo and I return our practice weapons to the rack. We exchange few words. None are needed. The shared experience of practice has communicated more than conversation could. He goes to join a group of samurai heading to the bathhouse, but I linger in the dojo a moment longer. I watch as the space empties, the energy shifting, but not diminishing. Even without practitioners, the dojo retains a certain presence. The accumulated focus of countless hours of dedicated training seems to have permeated the very walls. As I finally turn to leave, I feel the pleasant fatigue in my muscles, the centered clarity in my mind. The morning's training has served its purpose, not merely to hone technique, but to cultivate the proper spirit. I step back into my sandals at the entrance and slide the door open, greeted by the fresher air outside. The sun has risen higher now, and I can see servants preparing the tea house in the garden nearby. The wooden structure, with its low eaves and precise proportions, offers an invitation to a different kind of discipline. that of the tea ceremony. The next obligation in my day's rhythm. The next part of my day, the tea ceremony. I slide open the delicate shoji door to the tea room, pausing at the threshold. The nijiriguchi, the low, crawl-through entrance, requires me to bow my head and enter with humility, regardless of my station. This is the way of tea. All who enter this space leave their rank outside. Even Lord Matsumoto himself would bend to pass through this opening, a reminder that before the ceremony, all men are equal. Inside, the air changes. It carries a subtle blend of scents: aged tatami, the lingering trace of incense from yesterday's ceremony, and the earthy aroma of charcoal smoldering in the sunken hearth. The room is small, perhaps 4.5 tatami mats in size, following the ideal of the great tea master Sen no Rikyu, who taught that true beauty lies in restraint, not excess. Morning light filters through the high windows, casting soft, diffused illumination across the room. The simplicity here is deliberate. Unadorned walls, save for the tokonoma alcove where a single scroll hangs. Today, it bears a character brushed in bold, flowing strokes. Zen, serenity. Below it stands a small vase holding 3 sprigs of early plum blossoms, their pale pink petals a gentle contrast to the austere surroundings. Hayashi, the tea master, kneels by the hearth, his movements unhurried and precise. At 60 winters, his hands still move with the grace of flowing water. Every gesture refined through decades of devotion to the way of tea. He acknowledges my arrival with a slight bow but does not speak. Words are unnecessary here. They would only disrupt the atmosphere of tranquility that envelops this sacred space. I approach the hearth and take my place on the opposite side, kneeling in seize position, my back straight, hands resting lightly on my thighs. The only sound is the soft hiss of the charcoal and the barely audible whisper of my hakama as it settles around me. Though I have removed my swords before entering, as is proper, I maintain the posture befitting my station, balancing formality with the relaxed presence that tea demands. Hayashi begins the preparations with a cleaning ritual, wiping each utensil with a silk cloth the color of autumn maple leaves. The chakin, a white linen cloth for wiping the tea bowl. The chashaku, a slender bamboo scoop for measuring the powdered tea. The chasen, a whisk carved from a single piece of bamboo, its tines delicate yet resilient. Each item is treated with reverence, as if it were a priceless treasure rather than a simple tool. I watch his movements, letting my mind settle into the rhythm of the ceremony. This is not merely about drinking tea, it is a meditation, a moment extracted from time where every gesture carries meaning. The cares of the outside world, the politics of the daimyo's court, the upcoming journey I must undertake, the weight of responsibilities awaiting me beyond these walls, all recede like mist before the morning sun. The water in the iron kettle has been heating since before dawn, ensuring it reaches the perfect temperature. Hayashi lifts the lid momentarily, releasing a small cloud of steam that rises in spiraling tendrils before dissolving into the air. The kettle itself is unadorned, its surface darkened with age, bearing the patina of countless ceremonies. The water speaks, Hayashi says, breaking the silence with these traditional words. Indeed, the water has begun to murmur, tiny bubbles forming along the kettle's inner walls, creating a sound like distant wind through pine needles. Not quite boiling, that would be too harsh for the delicate matcha, but at the precise moment when the water is fully alive. With the chakin, he wipes the tea bowl, a winter chowan with a thick glaze the color of snow-covered earth, uneven at the rim as if shaped by nature rather than human hands. The bowl appears humble at first glance, yet reveals its beauty through subtle details. The play of light across its surface, the single finger mark left by the potter, the way it seems to nestle perfectly in one's hands, as if it were an extension of the body. Using the bamboo ladle, Hayashi transfers water to the tea bowl, warming it before discarding the water into a waste bowl with a movement that is both practical and graceful. He then measures 3 scoops of bright green matcha powder into the warmed bowl, each movement deliberate, unhurried. Fresh water is added, not by pouring, but by allowing it to flow from the ladle in a continuous stream, the sound barely perceptible, yet somehow filling the small room. Taking the whisk between his thumb and forefinger, Hayashi begins to blend the tea using a precise motion, not circular but in the shape of the character No, creating a smooth froth without bubbles. When the tea has reached the perfect consistency, thick enough to hold the froth but not so thick as to be bitter, he places the bowl on the tatami before me with a slight turn, positioning its most beautiful aspect toward me, an honor reserved for the guest. I bow in acknowledgement of this gift and lift the bowl with my right hand, transferring it to my left palm where it rests while I rotate it clockwise twice, as tradition dictates. The warmth penetrates my hands, a living heat that speaks of the care with which it was prepared. The first sip is small, a taste only. The matcha is bright and vegetal, with notes of spring grass and a subtle sweetness that lingers at the edges. There is a pleasant bitterness too, the kind that reminds one that life contains multitudes, sweetness and bitterness existing not in opposition but in harmony. I take 2 more sips, each one measured, each one savored. The room remains silent, save for the occasional soft pop from the charcoal. No words are necessary to express appreciation. My focused attention on the experience is thanks enough. With the final sip, I allow myself to notice the bowl itself once more. The way the remaining tea leaves a crescent moon of green against the pale interior. The subtle variations in the glaze that reveal themselves only upon close inspection. These are the details that the way of tea teaches us to perceive. The beauty hidden within simplicity that most eyes pass over without seeing. I wipe the rim where my lips touched with my fingertips, then rotate the bowl counterclockwise to return it to its original position before placing it back on the tatami with a bow of thanks. Hayashi acknowledges with his own bow, the exchange completing the heart of the ceremony. Though there would traditionally be conversation at this point, we maintain our silence by mutual understanding. Some mornings require words. This one calls for quiet reflection. As the ceremony concludes, Hayashi cleans each utensil with the same care with which he prepared them, returning them to their proper places. Nothing is rushed, nothing overlooked. Each action flows into the next with natural grace. The movements themselves a form of art as worthy of appreciation as any painted masterpiece. When all is complete, he bows once more, deeper this time. May the day bring clarity, he says, the traditional blessing that concludes our morning ritual. I am grateful for your guidance, I respond, the formal words carrying genuine sentiment. These moments of peace before the day's duties are a gift beyond measure. I rise from seiza position, feeling a renewed sense of balance. The ceremony has achieved its purpose. Not simply to serve tea, but to create a space where one can find center amidst the chaos of existence. I carry this centeredness with me as I prepare to leave, knowing it will serve me well in the hours ahead. Outside the tea room, the world awaits. The sun has risen higher now, and the sounds of the estate have grown. Servants hurrying about their tasks, the distant calls of guards at the outer gates, the occasional sharp crack of wooden swords from the practice yard. Soon I will be summoned to the Daimyo's hall to receive my instructions for the day. But for this moment, this breath, I stand at the threshold between worlds, the sacred space of tea behind me, the demands of duty before me, and feel perfectly balanced between them, like a drop of dew poised on the edge of a leaf, neither falling nor retreating, simply being. With a final deep breath, I step forward onto the path that leads to the main hall, ready to receive whatever tasks Lord Matsumoto will entrust to me today. The next part of my day, the Daimyo's command. I kneel in the antechamber to Lord Matsumoto's audience hall, my breathing steady and controlled. The messenger who summoned me has already departed, leaving me alone with my thoughts as I wait permission to enter my daimyo's presence. The wooden floor beneath my knees has been polished to a soft sheen by generations of servants, its surface cool and smooth against my skin. The antechamber itself is sparse compared to what lies beyond. A single scroll hangs in the alcove, a masterful rendering of a mountain landscape, mist curling around distant peaks. Beneath it stands a low table holding a simple arrangement of early spring branches, their pale blossoms softening the austere space. The scent of incense lingers in the air, sandalwood and a hint of something more precious, perhaps agarwood, imported at great expense from distant southern lands. Time passes differently in these moments of waiting. I focus on my posture, ensuring my back remains straight, my hands resting properly on my thighs. A samurai's discipline is most evident when he believes no one is watching. I adjust the placement of my swords at my side, the familiar weight of them against my hip, a reminder of both my duty and my honor. The sliding door before me opens silently, revealing one of Lord Matsumoto's personal attendants, an elderly man who has served the family for longer than I have been alive. His face is impassive, but his eyes hold the quiet wisdom of one who has observed the inner workings of power for decades. "Lord Matsumoto will see you now," he says, his voice soft yet clear. I rise in a single fluid motion, practiced and deliberate, and follow him through the doorway. The transition from antechamber to audience hall is like stepping from shadow into light. Where the antechamber was restrained, the hall embodies the full dignity of the Matsumoto clan. The ceiling soars overhead, supported by massive wooden beams darkened with age. Screens painted with scenes of ancient battles and mythical creatures line the walls, their gold leaf catching the morning light that filters through the high windows. Tapestries of silk hang between them, each one a testament to the skill of the finest weavers in the province. Intricately carved wooden panels separate the main hall from smaller side chambers, their patterns of pine, bamboo, and plum symbolizing perseverance, resilience, and beauty that endures even in the harshest seasons. I follow the attendant across the polished wooden floor, my steps silent despite the vastness of the room. At the far end sits Lord Matsumoto upon a slightly raised platform, kneeling behind a low table of lacquered wood inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Two guards stand at a respectful distance, their presence more symbolic than necessary within the heart of the estate. The attendant announces me with practiced formality, then withdraws to the edge of the room. I approach the designated spot before Lord Matsumoto's table, then bow deeply, my forehead nearly touching the floor. I hold this position, awaiting acknowledgement. "Rise, Takeshi," Lord Matsumoto says, his voice deep and measured. I straighten, still kneeling, and meet his gaze. Lord Matsumoto is neither young nor old, a man in his prime, with the first strands of gray only just beginning to appear in his carefully tied hair. His face bears the composed expression of one accustomed to command, yet there are subtle lines around his eyes that speak of a capacity for both wisdom and humor. He wears formal kimono of deep indigo, the color of his house, with his family crest embroidered at the shoulders in silver thread. "You have served our house with loyalty and skill these 15 years, he begins, pouring tea from a simple but elegant ceramic pot into 2 bowls. "Your father before you did the same, as did his father." "It is my honor, my lord," I respond, the ritual words coming easily. He pushes one of the tea bowls toward me across the table. "This is a signal honor. To share tea with one's daimyo is not a common occurrence." I accept the bowl with both hands, bowing my head in gratitude. The tea is of the finest quality, its aroma complex and earthy. I take a small sip, appreciating the subtle bitterness followed by unexpected sweetness. Only after Lord Matsumoto has also tasted his tea do I place the bowl carefully back on the table. "Troubled times approach, Takeshi," he says, his voice lowered though there are no others near enough to hear. "The political winds in Edo shift like autumn leaves. The shogun's advisors whisper of new alliances forming, old ones breaking." I listen intently, keeping my expression neutral, though my mind races to understand the implications. Lord Matsumoto rarely speaks so directly of political matters, even to his senior retainers. Our neighbor to the east, Lord Kano, has been receiving unusual visitors these past months. Merchants from the southern provinces, ronin seeking employment, even a Buddhist monk who, I am told, spends more time discussing military matters than spiritual ones. The sunlight shifts as a cloud passes outside, momentarily dimming the golden glow of the hall. In that brief shadow, Lord Matsumoto's expression grows more severe. "I require eyes and ears beyond our borders, Takeshi. Someone who can move through Kano's territory without arousing suspicion. Someone who can observe and interpret what they see with both intelligence and discretion." I bow my head. "I am at your service, my lord." Tomorrow you will depart for the village of Mizumoto, which lies just within Kano's western border. It hosts a spring festival that draws visitors from throughout the region. You will go as a masterless samurai, a ronin seeking employment, or perhaps merely passing through. The story I leave to your discretion. A servant enters silently, bearing a lacquered document box which he places beside Lord Matsumoto before withdrawing. My daimyo opens it, removing a small scroll which he passes to me. This contains more detailed instructions and information about the village and the surrounding area. Commit it to memory, then burn it before you depart. I accept the scroll with both hands, tucking it carefully into my kimono. While your primary purpose is to observe, you must also protect our interests should the need arise. The village headman in Mizumoto, a man named Tanaka, has been a friend to our family for many years. His daughter was married to one of our retainers until her untimely death 3 winters ago. If Tanaka should seek your aid, you may provide it, so long as doing so does not compromise your true mission. I understand, my lord. Lord Matsumoto lifts his tea bowl again, his eyes thoughtful as he studies me over its rim. You were chosen for this task for your skill with both sword and words, Takeshi. There may be times when the latter serves you better than the former. Yes, my lord. He sets down his bowl with finality. You will take only what a traveling ronin might reasonably possess. One of my personal merchants will be traveling the same road 3 days behind you. Should you need to send word, he can be trusted implicitly. What of my return, my lord? When the festival ends, unless circumstances dictate otherwise, I expect it will be no more than 2 weeks. He pauses, considering. If you do not return within a month, I will assume you have met with misfortune and act accordingly. The weight of his words settles over me like a mantle. This is no simple mission, despite the straightforward nature of the instructions. The political tensions between domains have grown increasingly complex in recent years, with the shogun's power in Edo waning and ambitious daimyo throughout the land positioning themselves for whatever change might come. Is there anything else I should know, my lord? I ask. Lord Matsumoto's expression softens slightly. Only this: trust your instincts, Takeshi. They have served you well in the past. He makes a small gesture with his hand, a subtle dismissal. I bow deeply once more, then back away several steps before rising and turning to leave. The audience hall seems somehow larger as I cross it in the opposite direction. The painted screens and hanging scrolls watching my departure like silent witnesses. As I step through the doorway into the antechamber, I feel the scroll inside my kimono, light in weight but heavy with significance. My mind already begins to prepare for the journey ahead, what I will need, who I might encounter, how I must comport myself as a masterless samurai rather than a trusted retainer of the Matsumoto clan. The elderly attendant reappears, guiding me not back the way I came but through a different corridor that leads to a small side garden. Lord Matsumoto thought you might wish for a moment of reflection before rejoining the household, he explains, his voice barely above a whisper. I step out into the garden, a perfectly composed arrangement of stone, moss, and carefully pruned trees. A small stream winds through it, its soft murmuring the only sound besides the occasional call of a bird. Tomorrow I will begin my journey to Mizumoto village, carrying Lord Matsumoto's trust like the most precious of cargo. For now, I have this moment of tranquility in which to prepare my spirit for the task ahead. The next part of my day, the early morning journey. I set out as the first hint of dawn touches the eastern sky, a faint luminescence barely distinguishable from the night. The stable master had my horse ready, a sturdy chestnut stallion named Kaze, meaning wind, though he himself appeared barely awake, his eyes still heavy with interrupted sleep. No words passed between us, only a respectful nod as I mounted and took the reins in hand. The gates of Lord Matsumoto's estate opened silently before me, well-oiled hinges betraying no sound. The guards bowed deeply as I pass, their armor catching the subtle glow of their paper lanterns. My mission is known to them. A journey to the village of Minamoto to assess the rice harvest and ensure that all is in order before the tax collection in the coming month. As I guide Kaze down the path that leads away from the estate, the world exists in that ethereal state between night and day. The road ahead is shrouded in a soft mist that hovers a handspan above the ground, giving the landscape an otherworldly quality. It is as if I am riding through the boundary between the mortal realm and the spirit world, a transient visitor to both yet belonging fully to neither. The steady rhythm of Kaze's hooves against the packed earth creates a soothing cadence, a natural meditation that allows my mind to settle into a state of calm alertness. Each breath I take fills my lungs with the cool morning air, crisp and clean, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and the subtle sweetness of wild grasses. To my right, the land falls away into terraced rice paddies, their waters perfectly still, reflecting the gradual brightening of the sky like countless mirrors laid out in geometric precision. The young rice plants stand in neat rows, emerald shoots reaching upward with quiet determination. Farmers will soon arrive to tend these fields, but for now, I am the sole witness to their silent beauty. To my left, a gentle slope rises toward a line of ancient pines that mark the boundary of Lord Matsumoto's lands. Their silhouettes stand dark against the lightening sky, sentinels that have watched over these fields for generations before my birth and will continue long after I return to dust. I allow Kaze to set a comfortable pace. There is no need for haste on this morning. The village lies only a few rai away, perhaps 2 hours' ride at this leisurely gait. The importance lies not in swift arrival, but in mindful observation, noting the condition of the roads, the health of the crops, the signs of proper maintenance or worrisome neglect. A pair of cranes rises suddenly from a paddy field, startled perhaps by some unseen movement in the water. They ascend with elegant wing beats, their long legs trailing behind them as they climb into the brightening sky. Their call, a melodious, trumpeting sound, breaks the morning silence before fading as they disappear into the distance. The sun now begins its true ascent, the first golden rays stretching across the landscape. The mist, touched by this new warmth, begins to dissipate, curling upward in delicate tendrils before vanishing altogether. Dewdrops on grass stems and spider webs glisten like scattered jewels, each one holding for a moment the perfect reflection of the world before evaporating into the warming air. I pass a small shrine set back from the road, its vermilion gate a vivid contrast to the subdued palette of the early morning. I pause Kaze with the gentlest pressure on the reins and bow my head in respect to the kami that resides there. Though I cannot stop to make a proper offering, this acknowledgement is better than none. The land is filled with spirits, both benevolent and mischievous. A wise traveler shows proper reverence to all. As the road curves to follow the natural contour of a hillside, I catch my first glimpse of Mount Fuji in the far distance. Its perfect cone rising above all else on the horizon. Its peak is touched with the first light of day, glowing like a beacon while the lower slopes remain in shadow. The sight stirs something profound within me, a reminder of permanence amidst the flow of constant change that defines our mortal existence. The road now descends into a shallow valley where a stream crosses beneath a simple wooden bridge. As Kazi's hooves meet the planks, a hollow, rhythmic sound replaces the soft thud of earth. Below, the water moves with gentle purpose, making its unhurried journey from the mountains to the distant sea. I pause in the center of the bridge, allowing my horse to drink from the clear water while I take in the vista before me. Beyond the bridge, the road winds through a small forest of bamboo. As I guide Kaze forward, the quality of light changes, filtered through countless green leaves to create a dappled pattern that shifts with each step. The temperature drops perceptibly as we enter this natural canopy, and the sounds change as well. The soft rustle of bamboo leaves stirred by the gentlest breeze, the occasional call of a hidden bird, the creak and groan of stems rubbing against one another in a natural chorus. The path through the bamboo forest is narrow, forcing me to be mindful of low-hanging branches and exposed roots. Kaze navigates these obstacles with practiced ease, his ears flicking forward and back as he attends to the environment around us. The connection between rider and horse is one built on mutual trust. I trust his sure-footedness, and he trusts my guidance. Emerging from the bamboo, we enter a clearing where wildflowers grow in natural abundance, purple and white blooms whose names I do not know, but whose beauty requires no naming to be appreciated. Butterflies, their wings still heavy with morning dew, flutter from blossom to blossom in seemingly random patterns, yet each movement serves a purpose in the greater design of nature. The sun has risen fully now, though its angle is still low, casting long shadows across the path ahead. The day promises to be fair, with only a few scattered clouds drifting across the vast expanse of blue above. The air has lost its morning chill, replaced by a pleasant warmth that speaks of the changing seasons. No longer spring, not yet the full heat of summer. I can see smoke rising from distant hearths, marking the location of the village of Minamoto, though it remains beyond my sight. Farmers are now appearing in the fields, their conical hats and simple clothing creating moving dots across the landscape. They pause in their work as I pass, bowing deeply from the waist in recognition of my status. I acknowledge them with a slight nod, neither dismissive nor overly familiar, maintaining the proper distance between samurai and peasant that has ordered our society for generations. A small fox crosses the path ahead, pausing briefly to regard me with intelligent eyes before disappearing into the tall grass beside the road. Such a sighting is considered fortunate by some, a visitation from the messengers of Inari, the kami of rice and prosperity. I take it as a good omen for my mission. The road begins to climb a gentle rise, and I know that once I crest this hill, the village of Minamoto will be visible in the valley beyond. I find myself looking forward to the simple tea that will undoubtedly be offered upon my arrival, perhaps with a small bowl of rice and pickled vegetables to break my morning fast. The headman will be nervous, as is always the case when a samurai arrives, but I have known him for many years, and our relationship, while never familiar, is built on mutual respect. As Kazi carries me toward the top of the rise, I take a moment to adjust my swords at my hip, ensuring they are properly positioned. Appearance matters, particularly when representing Lord Matsumoto in the outer reaches of his domain. Though this is a peaceful mission, the visible reminder of a samurai's authority serves its purpose without words being necessary. The hill's crest is just ahead now, and beyond it lies the next phase of my journey. The village with its humble houses, its industrious inhabitants, its small but vital place in the complex tapestry that makes up Lord Matsumoto's lands. I straighten my posture, inhale deeply of the morning air, and prepare to fulfill my duty with the same mindful attention that has guided my journey thus far. The next part of my day, the encounter with farmers. I guide my horse along the narrow path between the rice paddies, the morning mist still clinging to the valley despite the sun's strengthening rays. The village of Shimoda lies ahead, a cluster of thatched roofs nestled between the mountains and the sprawling fields that sustain its people. Lord Matsumoto has sent me to oversee the collection of the seasonal tribute, though I find myself in no particular hurry. There is a tranquility to these rural lands that offers a welcome respite from the structured formality of the estate. The water in the paddies reflects the blue of the morning sky, broken only by the bent figures of farmers tending their crops. They stand ankle-deep in the flooded fields, backs curved in permanent tribute to the earth that provides their sustenance. Their straw hats shield them from the sun, simple conical shapes dotting the landscape like scattered leaves. I slow my mount to a gentle walk, allowing the animal to pick its way carefully along the raised earthen path. The hooves make soft, rhythmic sounds against the packed dirt, a steady tempo that matches the slow cadence of the farmers' movements as they work among the young rice plants. Breath by breath, row by row, they tend to their precious crop with a patience I have come to admire. One farmer straightens as I approach, noticing the insignia of Lord Matsumoto on my kimono. He quickly bows, a gesture that ripples across the field as others become aware of my presence. I acknowledge them with a slight nod, appropriate to the difference in our stations yet respectful of their essential labor. The crops appear healthy this season. I call to the nearest farmer, an older man whose weathered face speaks of decades beneath the sun. "Yes, my lord," he replies, keeping his eyes downcast. "The gods have blessed us with favorable weather. The harvest should be bountiful, with proper tribute for Lord Matsumoto." I dismount, allowing my horse to drink from a clear stream that runs alongside the path. The earth feels solid beneath my feet after hours of riding, a welcome change. I stretch subtly, working out the stiffness in my limbs while maintaining the dignified bearing expected of my station. The farmer seems uncertain whether to continue his work or attend to me. I gesture for him to return to his tasks. "Please do not let me interrupt your labor. The rice will not plant itself." He bows again, relief evident in his posture, and wades deeper into the paddy. I watch as he meticulously adjusts a young rice shoot, ensuring it stands properly in the silty water. There is an art to his movements, born of years of practice and necessity. Not unlike my own training with the sword, I reflect. Both disciplines requiring dedication, precision, and respect for tradition. The scent of fertile earth rises from the paddies, mingling with the clean fragrance of water and growing things. A distant bell sounds from the village temple, its resonance carrying clearly across the open fields. Time moves differently here than at the daimyo's estate. It flows with the rhythm of nature rather than the dictates of protocol and duty. I lead my horse along the path, observing the intricate irrigation system that channels water from the mountain streams to each field. Simple in design, yet effective, the network of bamboo channels and earthen dikes represents generations of agricultural knowledge. My sandals make soft shuffling sounds against the dirt path, occasionally dislodging small pebbles that tumble into the water with gentle plops. As I approach the edge of the village, a group of children who had been playing near the first houses catches sight of me. They freeze momentarily, wide-eyed at the presence of a samurai in their midst. Then, as children often do, their curiosity overcomes their apprehension. They gather at a respectful distance, whispering among themselves and stealing glances at my swords. I offer them a gentle nod, and one brave boy steps forward, bowing deeply. "Honorable samurai, are you here to fight bandits?" he asks, his voice a mixture of awe and hope. A smile threatens at the corners of my mouth, though I maintain my composed expression. "I am here on Lord Matsumoto's business," I reply. "Have there been troubles with bandits?" The boy shakes his head vigorously, his companions doing the same behind him. "No, sir. Father says it is because Lord Matsumoto's samurai keep us safe." The simple statement strikes a chord within me. This, ultimately, is the purpose of my service. Not the ceremonies at court or the politics of clan alliances, but the protection of these ordinary lives. These farmers who tend the rice paddies, these children who play in the village streets, they are the true measure of a samurai's worth. "And so we shall continue to do," I tell him, with a solemnity that seems to satisfy his youthful conception of warrior dignity. An elderly woman emerges from a nearby house, calling the children to her with quick, apologetic glances in my direction. They scamper away reluctantly, casting backward glances until she ushers them around a corner. I continue into the village proper, leading my horse down the main path. The houses are simple structures of wood and thatch, modest but well-maintained. Laundry hangs from bamboo poles, indigo-dyed cotton garments rippling in the gentle breeze. The air carries the aroma of morning meals, miso and rice, the occasional hint of smoked fish. The village headman awaits me at the central meeting house, a building slightly larger than those surrounding it. He bows deeply as I approach, the gesture containing both respect and anxiety. "Honored samurai, we welcome you to Shimoda," he says, his voice steady despite his evident nervousness. "We have prepared the tribute as instructed by Lord Matsumoto's steward." I incline my head. I shall inspect it after I have rested. The journey from the estate is not short. Relief crosses his features. "Of course, we have prepared a meal and a place for you to refresh yourself." Inside the meeting house, the air is cooler, sheltered from the strengthening sun. A table has been set with simple but fresh food: rice, pickled vegetables, a small fish grilled with care. I remove my swords and place them beside me as I kneel at the table, positioning them with the respect they deserve. As I eat, the headman speaks of the village's concerns: the condition of the irrigation channels, a dispute over land boundaries with a neighboring settlement, worries about early spring storms damaging the newly planted rice. I listen attentively, knowing that Lord Matsumoto values such insights into the state of his domain. "The irrigation matter warrants attention," I tell him after considering his words. "I will speak with Lord Matsumoto's Master of Works upon my return." His gratitude is evident, though restrained by propriety. We finish the meal in companionable silence, the only sounds being the distant calls of farmers in the fields and the gentle clatter of wooden utensils against ceramic bowls. After the meal, I step outside once more. The sun now stands high, burning away the last of the morning mist. The village is alive with midday activities: women weaving at looms set up in the shade, and elderly craftsmen repairing a wooden water wheel. Children helping to shell beans for the evening meal. I walk slowly through these scenes of village life, observing without intruding. There is a harmony here that contrasts with the rigid hierarchies of castle life. Each person knows their place, their duty, yet moves within it with a natural grace born of necessity and tradition. As I prepare to inspect the tribute and continue my journey, I reflect on the dual nature of my role. I am both separate from these people and intrinsically bound to them. My duty is to stand above, yet to serve, to maintain the order that allows these fields to be tended, these children to play, this village to endure. The headman approaches, indicating that the tribute has been assembled and is ready for inspection. With a final glance at the peaceful village scene, I follow him toward the storehouse, carrying these reflections with me as I move toward the next phase of my duties. The next part of my day, the marketplace. I make my way through the village, following the gradually increasing sounds of commerce and conversation. The morning sun has reached its mid-height, warming the air and bringing with it the unmistakable bustle of market day. The narrow path I walk broadens as I approach the town center, where the weekly market has been established since before my father's time. As I round the final corner, the marketplace unfolds before me, a tapestry of color, sound, and movement, so different from the ordered tranquility of Lord Matsumoto's estate. Here, the pulse of ordinary life flows unrestrained, a reminder of the world I am sworn to protect, yet seldom engage with directly. My presence causes a ripple of awareness. Conversations momentarily pause, eyes glance my way, and some villagers bow slightly before returning to their activities. My indigo kimono and the two swords at my waist mark me clearly as a samurai of Lord Matsumoto's household. I do not require their deference, merely their honesty in dealings and their loyalty to the Daimyo. I pause beside a stall where an elderly woman arranges fabric dyed in hues of burnt orange, deep reds, and pale yellows. Her weathered hands move with surprising grace, folding and refolding the textiles to display their best aspects. When she notices me, her eyes widen slightly, but she continues her work. "Beautiful colors," I remark, running my fingertips lightly across a length of cotton the color of autumn maples. "The finest dyes from Kyoto, Lord," she responds, her voice carrying the slight tremor of age but none of fear. "My son trades for them twice yearly." I nod, acknowledging both her craft and her courage in speaking directly. Many villagers find conversation with samurai intimidating, but this woman has the quiet dignity that comes with mastery of her art. Moving deeper into the marketplace, I feel the gentle press of bodies around me, though a small space is always maintained. No one comes too close. The ground beneath my sandaled feet transitions from packed earth to wooden planking in some areas, each surface bearing the testament of countless footsteps over generations. A merchant calls out his wares. Fresh fish brought inland from the coast, still glistening with sea moisture, nestled in beds of crushed ice and seaweed. The pungent scent of brine carries through the air, mingling with the sweeter aromas from the food stalls nearby. There, women tend to simmering pots of soup, grilling skewers of chicken, and forming rice balls stuffed with pickled plum. My stomach responds with a subtle reminder that I have been traveling since early morning. I approach a stall where an older man shapes rice balls with practiced efficiency, his hands moving in a rhythm as natural as breathing. "Two, if you please," I say, reaching for the small cloth pouch where I keep coins for such occasions. "For Lord Matsumoto's samurai, it is an honor," the man responds, bowing deeply and selecting his finest work. He wraps them carefully in bamboo leaves before presenting them to me. I insist on paying despite his protestations. A samurai does not take advantage of the people he protects. The exchange of coins completed, I step aside to make room for other customers, finding a quiet spot at the edge of the marketplace to enjoy this simple meal. The rice is perfectly seasoned, the pickled plum center providing a sharp contrast to the mild flavor of the grain. I eat slowly, observing the flow of life around me. Children weave through the crowd on some urgent, mysterious errand of their own. A young couple examines pottery, their heads bent close together in consultation. An aged farmer haggles good-naturedly with a tea merchant, each knowing the dance will end in a fair price for both. As I finish my meal, I notice a crowd gathering around a performer at the far end of the market. Curiosity draws me closer. An old man sits cross-legged on a woven mat, a biwa lute cradled in his arms. His fingers, gnarled like ancient tree roots, nevertheless move with fluid precision across the strings, coaxing forth a melody that speaks of mountains and rivers, of changing seasons and enduring stone. I stand at the edge of the gathering, allowing the music to wash over me. The old man's voice joins the instrument, telling a tale of long ago, of warriors and honor, of sacrifice and duty. It is a story I know well, one told in the halls of nobility and in humble village gatherings alike, binding us together across the divisions of rank and privilege. When the song ends, I place a coin in the bowl before the musician, our eyes meeting briefly in mutual respect. He nods once, acknowledging not my position but my appreciation for his art. The day advances, shadows shortening as the sun climbs higher. The marketplace continues its rhythmic existence around me as I walk its perimeter, taking note of unfamiliar faces, listening for any news that might concern Lord Matsumoto's interests. At a stall selling medicinal herbs, I pause to observe the careful measuring of dried roots and leaves. The herbalist, a middle-aged woman with calm, knowing eyes, explains the properties of each to a young mother. I listen. Adding to my own knowledge, a samurai must understand not only the ways of warfare, but also of healing, for both serve the protection of the people. This root strengthens the blood, the herbalist explains, holding up a twisted, reddish specimen. Steep it with ginger when the winter colds threaten. I make a mental note, thinking of the coming change of seasons and the illnesses that often follow in their wake. Further along, a blacksmith works in the open air, the rhythmic clanging of his hammer on heated metal, creating a counterpoint to the market's more chaotic sounds. His apprentice works the bellows, face gleaming with sweat despite the mild temperature. I watch as they craft tools, not weapons but the implements of daily life. Knives for the kitchen, hoes for the field, needles for mending. Without these humble tools, the grandest castle would eventually crumble, the finest army disperse. The blacksmith notices my attention and pauses in his work, bowing slightly. I return the gesture with a nod, acknowledging the importance of his craft. As I complete my circuit of the marketplace, I notice a group of village elders gathered beneath the spreading branches of an ancient oak at the square's edge. Their faces are serious, their conversation muted. One man gestures emphatically while others shake their heads in apparent disagreement. My duty to Lord Matsumoto extends to understanding the concerns of his people. I approach the group, and their conversation ceases immediately. They bow, expressions carefully neutral, but I can sense the tension beneath the courtesy. Is there a matter of concern I should be aware of? I inquire, keeping my tone even, neither commanding nor deferential. The oldest among them, a man whose wispy beard has long since turned white, steps forward slightly. There has been a dispute between two families over water rights, honorable samurai. With the dry season approaching, the upper field farmers fear the lower village will take more than their share. This then explains my true purpose in the marketplace today. Not merely observation, but intervention before a simple disagreement grows into something that might disturb the peace of Lord Matsumoto's domain. The timing of disputes is rarely coincidental. I see, I reply, my mind already considering how best to resolve this before returning to the estate. Then perhaps we should speak with representatives from both parties. The elders exchange glances, seemingly relieved that I do not dismiss their concerns. One nods and says, "They await your wisdom in the village headman's house, honorable one." I cast a final glance across the marketplace, this vibrant tapestry of human endeavor, this microcosm of the world I serve. Then, with a slight incline of my head to the elders, I turn toward the headman's house, where the next duty of my day awaits. The next part of my day, the call to arms. I am standing at the edge of the village market, observing the rhythm of daily life when a young boy approaches, his wooden sandals clattering urgently against the dirt path. His breathing comes in quick, shallow bursts as he stops before me and drops into a hasty bow. "Honorable samurai," he manages between breaths, "there is trouble in the central square. The headman requests your assistance." I nod once, my expression remaining composed despite the quickening of my thoughts. This is my duty, to maintain order and justice within Lord Matsumoto's domain. The boy turns immediately, leading the way through the winding paths of the village. The sounds reach me before I see the source of the disturbance. Raised voices, the dull thud of objects being thrown, the collective murmur of onlookers. As we round the final corner, the village square opens before me, a scene of controlled chaos unfolding beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient Zelkova tree. Two men stand at the center of a rough circle formed by villagers. One is older, perhaps 50 summers, his weathered face flushed with anger, his calloused hands clenched into tight fists. The other is younger, barely past 20, with the lean build of someone who works the rice fields from dawn until dusk. Between them lies an overturned cart, vegetables and bundles of rice straw scattered across the packed earth. I approach with measured steps, my sandals making soft impressions in the dust. The crowd parts silently, eyes downcast as I pass. The weight of my daisho at my hip serves as a reminder of both my authority and my responsibility. I am not merely an arbiter of disputes, but a representative of Lord Matsumoto himself. The village headman stands at the edge of the circle, his face creased with worry. He bows deeply as I approach. "What has happened here?" I ask, my voice calm but carrying enough authority to silence the arguing men momentarily. "Honorable samurai," the headman begins, straightening from his bow. "There is a dispute over land boundaries. Tanaka-san," he gestures to the older man, claims that Ishida-san, a nod toward the younger, has been cultivating a strip of land that belongs to the Tanaka family. This morning, words became actions. I turn my attention to the two men. Neither meets my gaze directly, a sign of respect, but also perhaps of shame at having their dispute escalate to require my intervention. "Tanaka-san," I address the older man first, "explain your grievance." The man bows, then speaks with the deliberate cadence of someone choosing his words with care. "My lord, my family has farmed that southern strip of land for 4 generations. The boundary stone was moved during the last flood, but the land remains ours by right and by the records kept by the headman." I listen, noting the tremor in his voice, not fear, but the restrained anger of a man who believes deeply in his claim. When he finishes, I turn to the younger man. "Ishida-san, what say you to this?" The young farmer bows lower, his forehead nearly touching the ground. "Honorable samurai, I have only planted where my father showed me was our land. The boundary stone marks the edge of Tanaka's property, and I have not crossed it. I have 5 mouths to feed, and cannot afford to lose what little rice that strip produces." I observe them both carefully, noting the calluses on their hands, the weathered skin of their faces, the simple but clean clothing they wear. These are not dishonest men, yet they stand opposed, each believing himself wronged by the other. The late morning sun casts dappled shadows through the Zelkova leaves, painting patterns across the dusty ground. A gentle breeze carries the scent of wood smoke from cooking fires and the distant, earthy smell of the rice paddies. Time seems to slow as I consider how to proceed. "Show me this disputed land," I command, my tone leaving no room for argument. The crowd parts once more as I follow the two men and the headman from the village square. We walk in silence along a narrow path that winds between modest houses with thatched roofs. Children peer from doorways, quickly pulled back by cautious mothers. The weight of my responsibility settles more firmly upon my shoulders with each step. After a short walk, we reach the southern edge of the village lands, where the rice paddies stretch out in perfect green rectangles, separated by narrow raised pathways of packed earth. The disputed strip is immediately apparent, a long, narrow section between 2 larger fields, perhaps wide enough for 10 rows of rice plants. I stand at the edge of the pathway, taking in the landscape with careful attention. The boundary stone, a rough-hewn marker rising knee-high from the ground, stands slightly askew, its base partially exposed where the earth has eroded around it. "Headman," I say, "bring the village records." While we wait, I move closer to inspect the stone. Its surface is worn smooth by generations of weather, but the mark of Lord Matsumoto's family is still visible, carved into its face. I kneel, feeling the cool, rough surface beneath my fingertips. The ground around its base tells a story. The recent heavy rains have indeed shifted the soil, exposing roots of nearby grass that would normally be buried. The headman returns with a wooden box containing scrolls. He kneels respectfully at the pathway's edge and unrolls one, weighing its corners with small stones to prevent it from curling. This is the land record from before the spring floods, he explains, pointing to a carefully drawn map of the village fields. I study the document, noting the precise measurements and boundaries. Then I look up at the land before me, at the stone, at the faces of the two farmers who wait in tense silence for my judgment. Bring me a measuring rope, I instruct, and a young man from the gathering crowd runs to fetch one. When it arrives, I place one end at the large oak that marks the corner of the village shrine's grounds, a fixed point noted in the records. With slow, deliberate steps, I measure the distance indicated in the scroll, the headman walking beside me, counting aloud. The boundary falls 2 paces north of where the stone now stands, exactly as Tanaka claimed. I turn to the younger farmer, whose face has paled with the realization. Ishida-san, the boundary stone was indeed moved by the floods. This strip belongs to the Tanaka family by right and record. The young man's shoulders slump, and I see in his eyes the calculation of what this loss will mean for his family through the winter months. Before he can speak, I continue. However, a samurai's duty is not merely to uphold the letter of the law, but to ensure justice and harmony. I turn to the older farmer. Tanaka-san, you have 4 sons to work your lands, while Ishida has none. Would it not show great wisdom and generosity to lease this strip to him for a fair portion of its yield? Such an arrangement would benefit both your families and bring honor to your name. Tanaka's weathered face registers surprise, then thoughtfulness. He looks at the young farmer, at the disputed land, and finally back to me. It would be agreeable, my lord, if Ishida acknowledges that the land remains Tanaka property, but may be used by his family for 3 rice seasons, with a tribute of 1/5 of its yield. I look to Ishida, who bows deeply. It is more than fair, honorable samurai. I accept with gratitude. Then it is settled, I say, satisfaction warming my voice. Headman, record this agreement in the village scrolls. Let it be known that both men have shown wisdom today. As we walk back toward the village center, I observe the 2 farmers now walking side by side. The tension between them dissolved like morning mist under the sun. This is the way of true justice, not merely deciding who is right, but finding the path that brings harmony to all. The villagers who had gathered to watch disperse gradually, returning to their daily tasks. I notice the headman watching me with quiet respect. You have brought peace without using your sword, honorable samurai, he observes softly. The finest victory requires no battle, I reply, recalling the words of my teacher. Lord Matsumoto values harmony in his domains above all. As midday approaches, I make my way back toward the main road where my horse waits. The dispute resolved, I must continue my patrol of the countryside before returning to report to my lord. The weight of my daisho at my hip feels lighter somehow, even as the sun climbs higher in the sky, promising a warm journey back to the estate. The next part of my day, the return to the Daimyo. I pass through the outer gates of Lord Matsumoto's estate as the afternoon sun begins its gradual descent toward the western mountains. The guards recognize me immediately, bowing with respect as I enter. My horse's hooves echo against the stone path, a rhythm that slows as we approach the stables. I have been away since early morning, resolving the dispute between the rice merchants and the village headmen, a task requiring both diplomacy and the firm authority that comes with representing my lord. The stable master greets me with a low bow, taking the reins of my horse with weathered hands that speak of decades of service. "Welcome back, honored samurai," he murmurs, his voice carrying the gentle rasp of age. I dismount slowly, feeling the stiffness in my legs from the long ride. The familiar scent of hay and horses surrounds me, comforting in its constancy. "He served well today," I tell the stable master, running my hand along my horse's neck one final time. The animal's coat is damp with sweat, his breathing still slightly labored from our journey. "See that he is properly cooled and given extra feed." "Of course, my lord. It shall be done as you say." I remove my travel satchel from the saddle and proceed toward the inner compound. The gravel of the path crunches softly beneath my feet, a sound that has always marked my returns home. For this is home more than any other place. This estate where I have served for 15 years, where my purpose is clear, my duty defined. The afternoon light casts long shadows across the carefully raked courtyard stones. A quiet beauty permeates the estate, The meticulously trimmed pines, the gentle curve of tiled roofs, the occasional splash from the koi pond, hidden behind a stand of bamboo. These sights ease the tension in my shoulders that I have carried throughout the day's negotiations. I pause at a stone basin near the entrance to the main building, dipping my hands into the cool water and cleansing the dust of travel from my face. The water is refreshing against my skin, carrying away not just dirt, but something of the day's burdens as well. I straighten my kimono and hakama, ensuring I am presentable before my lord. A servant appears at the entrance, bowing deeply. "The Daimyo awaits your report in the inner audience chamber," she says, her eyes respectfully lowered. "He asks that you join him at your earliest convenience." I nod my acknowledgement and follow her through the labyrinth of corridors that make up the main house. The wooden floors have been polished to a soft gleam, reflecting the paper lanterns that hang at intervals along the hallway. Our footsteps are nearly silent, both of us walking with the practiced quiet that is expected within these walls. The scent of incense grows stronger as we near the inner chambers, sandalwood and a hint of something more rare and precious. It is a scent I associate only with Lord Matsumoto, a fragrance imported at great expense from lands far to the west. We stop before an ornately carved wooden door. The servant kneels, announcing my presence in a soft voice. From within comes the measured tones of my lord, granting permission to enter. The servant slides the door open, bows once more, and withdraws, leaving me to step across the threshold alone. The inner audience chamber is dimly lit, with only a few paper lanterns illuminating the space. The walls are adorned with painted screens depicting scenes of battle and tranquility in equal measure, a reminder of the balance a wise ruler must maintain. Lord Matsumoto sits upon a slightly raised platform, a low table before him bearing a single cup of tea and a scroll partially unrolled. I approach to the appropriate distance, then kneel, bowing until my forehead touches the tatami mat. "My lord," I murmur, "I have returned from the village of Minamoto as ordered." "Rise, faithful one," comes his reply, his voice deep and measured like the tolling of a temple bell. "Share what you have accomplished." I straighten, but remain kneeling in the formal position, my back straight, hands resting lightly on my thighs. Lord Matsumoto studies me with eyes that seem to perceive more than merely what lies on the surface. He is not a young man. Silver threads now outnumber the black in his beard, but his gaze has lost none of its intensity over the years I have served him. "The dispute between the rice merchants and the village headmen has been resolved, my lord," I begin, keeping my voice even and clear. "The merchants claimed they were being charged excessive taxes on their goods, while the headman insisted he was merely collecting what was due to you." Lord Matsumoto nods slightly, encouraging me to continue. "Upon examination of the records, I discovered the truth lay somewhere between these claims. The headman had indeed increased the tax, but not to line his own pockets as the merchants believed. Rather, he sought to build a more substantial granary to protect the village's stores from the floods that have damaged their reserves these past 2 seasons. I pause, allowing my lord to absorb this information. The only sound in the room is the soft hiss of the oil lamps and our measured breathing. "And what solution did you implement?" he asks finally. "I reduced the tax to its proper level, my lord, but approved the headman's plan for the granary. Instead of funding it through increased taxation, I authorized a loan from your treasury to be repaid over 3 growing seasons. This satisfied both parties and ensures the village will have secure food stores before the autumn rains." The shadow of a smile passes across Lord Matsumoto's face, a rare expression of approval. "You found wisdom where others saw only conflict," he observes. "This pleases me." A warmth spreads through my chest at his words. Though I do not serve for praise, his approval means more to me than I would readily admit. "There is more, my lord," I continue. "While in the village, I observed signs that neighboring Lord Takeda's men have been patrolling beyond their boundaries. Nothing provocative yet, but worth noting." Lord Matsumoto's expression shifts subtly, the lines around his mouth deepening. "Interesting. This confirms reports from our northern border." He is silent for a moment, thoughtful. "You have done well today, both in resolving the immediate issue and in bringing this intelligence." He reaches for a small wooden box on the table beside him, opening it to reveal a folded paper. I had intended to send you to inspect our coastal defenses tomorrow, but in light of this news about Takeda, I believe your skills are needed elsewhere. He extends the paper toward me. These are your new orders. Study them tonight. You will depart at first light. I accept the paper with both hands, bowing my head in acknowledgement. It shall be as you command, my lord. Go now and rest. The journey ahead may require all your strength and wisdom. I bow once more deeply, then back away the appropriate distance before rising and turning to leave. As I reach the door, his voice stops me. Faithful one. I turn back, kneeling once more. My lord, your father would be proud of the samurai you have become. His words are soft, almost carried away by the flickering of the lanterns. I feel a tightness in my throat that I dare not show. Thank you, my lord. I live to honor his memory and your trust. He nods once, dismissing me with the slight gesture. I bow a final time and exit the chamber, sliding the door closed behind me with careful precision. The corridor seems brighter after the dimness of the audience chamber, though the sun has continued its westward journey while I was inside. I stand for a moment, allowing my eyes to adjust, feeling the weight of the folded orders in my hand. Whatever task awaits me tomorrow, I will face it with the knowledge that I have served well today. There is comfort in this thought as I make my way through the corridors toward my quarters, my steps measured and calm. The paper lanterns along the walkway have been lit against the gathering dusk, casting pools of gentle light to guide my way. In the gardens beyond, the first chorus of evening insects has begun their song, a subtle background to my thoughts. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new duties to fulfill. But for now, there is the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed, of my lord's approval, and the promise of a peaceful evening in which to prepare for whatever lies ahead. As I approach my quarters, I can see that a light meal has been set out, a tray bearing rice, grilled fish, and pickled vegetables. The sight reminds me that I have eaten little since dawn, and I feel a sudden awareness of my hunger. After my meal, I will review the orders Lord Matsumoto has entrusted to me, preparing myself for the councils and consultations that await me with the dawn. The next part of my day, the Counsel of Elders. I kneel on the tatami mat, my posture perfect despite the hours I have maintained it. The council chamber is dim, illuminated only by paper lanterns that cast long, gentle shadows across the polished wooden beams overhead. Before me stretches a low lacquered table, its surface reflecting the soft light like the surface of a still pond at dusk. Around this table sit the elders of our clan, men whose hair has turned to frost and whose faces bear the lines of countless battles and decisions. The air in the chamber is heavy with the scent of aged cedar and sandalwood incense that curls upward in thin, hypnotic tendrils from a bronze burner in the corner. The smoke forms shifting patterns against the darker shadows of the ceiling, like ghostly calligraphy, writing secrets only the wisest can read. Lord Matsumoto sits at the head of the table, his expression serene yet vigilant. Though he is not the eldest present, his position as our daimyo grants him the place of honor. To his right sits Master Tatsumi, our clan's most venerated swordsman, now too advanced in years to demonstrate his art, but whose mind remains as sharp as the blades he once wielded. To Lord Matsumoto's left is advisor Hirota, whose knowledge of politics and history has guided our clan through 3 generations of leadership. The northern provinces grow restless, advisor Hirota says, his voice low and measured, like the distant rumble of thunder before a summer storm. His gnarled fingers trace the outline of territories on a map spread before us. Their rice harvest failed for the 2nd season. Hunger makes men desperate, and desperate men make dangerous decisions. I listen intently, absorbing every word, every subtle inflection. As one of the younger samurai permitted to attend these councils, my role is primarily to listen and learn. The weight of this privilege is not lost on me. Many serve for decades without ever being invited into this inner sanctum of wisdom. The shogun has sent tax collectors regardless, Master Tatsumi adds, his voice carrying the rough edge of disapproval. They demand the same tribute as in years of plenty. A soft rustle of silk accompanies Lord Matsumoto's slight adjustment of position. The sound draws every eye, for when our lord moves, we all pay attention. The shogun must maintain the appearance of strength, he says quietly. Yet strength without wisdom is merely brutality. The elders nod in agreement, a slow, deliberate movement that ripples around the table like a gentle breeze through summer leaves. I remain still, absorbing the unspoken currents that flow beneath their words. This is how true learning occurs, not merely from what is said, but from what remains tactfully unspoken. Outside, rain has begun to fall, a gentle patter against the tiled roof. The sound forms a soothing backdrop to our discussion, nature's own rhythm accompanying the measured cadence of ancient voices. Occasionally, a drop finds its way through some hidden path in the roof tiles, landing with a distinct plop in a copper basin placed there for just this purpose. The sound punctuates the conversation like the beats of a temple drum. Lord Oda of the Eastern Province has strengthened his alliance with the coastal clans, continues Advisor Hirota, his fingertip now resting on the eastern territories of the map. His daughter will marry the heir of the Yamaguchi clan when the cherry blossoms fall. A strategic union, observes Master Hatano, the eldest among us, his voice barely above a whisper, yet commanding complete attention. His eyes, clouded with age but bright with intelligence, scan the faces around the table. We would be wise to send a generous gift. Respectful recognition of their union costs us little but gains much. I notice how the other elders defer to Master Hatano, how even Lord Matsumoto inclines his head slightly in acknowledgement of the wisdom in these words. There is a hierarchy even among these great men, built not on force or decree, but on respect earned through decades of sound judgment. The conversation turns to matters of our own province, the condition of roads connecting our villages, reports of bandits in the western forest, the progress of this season's rice planting. I listen with unwavering attention, storing away each piece of information, each perspective offered. This is how governance unfolds, not in grand declarations or heroic battles, but in these quiet discussions of mundane matters that together form the fabric of our people's lives. Tea is served midway through our council. The steward enters silently, bowing low before setting an iron kettle and ceramic cups before us. The steam rising from the spout carries the earthy aroma of green tea, grown on the southern slopes of our own mountains. We pause in our deliberations, honoring the ritual of refreshment. I watch Master Tatsumi lift his cup with hands that once commanded blades with legendary precision. Now they tremble slightly, yet there is dignity in how he accepts this change, never hiding the tremor, nor allowing it to prevent him from participating fully in the life of our clan. I hope that when my own strength eventually wanes, I will bear it with similar grace. The Merchant Guild has requested permission to expand their quarter in the town, Lord Matsumoto says after we have all been served. They promise increased trade and taxes. This prompts a longer discussion, with Master Hatano cautioning against the corrupting influence of excessive commerce, while Advisor Hirota argues for the practical benefits of greater wealth flowing into our province. I observe how they disagree without disrespect, how each listens fully to the other before offering his own thoughts. This, too, is a lesson, perhaps even more valuable than the specific matter being discussed. "And what do you think, Masashi?" Lord Matsumoto suddenly asks, his eyes finding mine. The question catches me by surprise. I had not expected to be addressed directly. The room falls silent, all eyes turning to me. I feel the weight of their collective gaze, these men who have guided our clan through war and peace, prosperity and hardship. For a moment, my throat feels dry despite the tea I have just consumed. I gather my thoughts, careful not to rush my answer. Haste has no place in this chamber of measured wisdom. I believe, I begin, my voice steady despite my inner uncertainty, that prosperity without principle leads to weakness. Yet principle without prosperity cannot long endure against the harsh realities of our world. Perhaps the Merchant Guild could be granted their request, but with conditions that ensure they contribute not only to our wealth, but to our values. A long silence follows my words. I maintain my composed expression, though inwardly I question whether I have overstepped, whether my youth and inexperience have led me to speak too boldly. Then Master Hatano nods, a single slow movement of approval. "The young eagle's eyes are sharp," he says, using an old proverb I have heard him quote before when pleased with a student's insight. Lord Matsumoto's expression remains impassive, but I detect a slight softening around his eyes. "We shall consider it," he says simply, before moving the discussion to other matters. The council continues as the rain outside intensifies, then gradually subsides. The rhythm of words and silence, proposal and consideration, flows like the changing patterns of weather beyond our walls. I remain attentive, honored to be included in this circle of contemplation. As dusk approaches, evident by the deepening shadows despite the lanterns, Lord Matsumoto brings the council to a close. "We have much to consider," he says. "Let us reflect on these matters and reconvene when the moon is full again." We bow as one, foreheads nearly touching the tatami mats, then rise in order of rank. Lord Matsumoto first, followed by the elders, with myself the last to straighten. As we file out of the chamber, Master Tatsumi's hand briefly touches my shoulder. A gesture so subtle it might have been accidental, yet I recognize it as a sign of approval. Outside, the rain has cleared, leaving the evening air fresh and cool. The setting sun breaks through clouds in the western sky, painting the wet roof tiles and stone pathways with a golden light. Tomorrow will bring the afternoon battle drills, a return to the physical demands of a samurai's life. But for now, my mind remains filled with the quiet wisdom of the elders, their words continuing to resonate within me, like the lingering tones of a temple bell. The next part of my day, the afternoon battle. The afternoon sun hangs high in the sky, its golden light stretching long shadows across the field. A warm breeze carries the scent of dry grass and the faint tang of sweat, rustling the tall reeds that border the open training ground. The air hums with cicadas, their steady drone weaving into the rhythmic clatter of wooden swords striking. The deep, measured breaths of warriors engaged in practice, and the occasional sharp command from the senior instructor overseeing the drill. I stand at the edge of the field, my hand resting lightly on the hilt of my katana, watching the movement of my fellow samurai. They move with discipline, each strike and parry an embodiment of years of dedication. The heat presses against my skin, but it is no stranger to me. Training beneath the relentless afternoon sun is as much a test of endurance as it is of skill. I step forward, bowing in respect before joining the drill. The bakken, a wooden training sword, feels solid in my grip, its weight familiar, yet never to be taken for granted. I position myself opposite my training partner, a seasoned warrior whose gaze is steady, unreadable. We both bow, a silent acknowledgement of the battle to come. At the instructor's call, we begin. Our movements are slow at first, deliberate. A single step forward, a measured strike, a careful deflection. The dance of combat unfolds in its practiced form, each motion precise, the angles of our swords calculated. The instructor calls out corrections from a distance, his voice firm yet steady, reminding us that even the most refined warriors must always refine further. Sweat beads along my brow as we quicken the pace. The sound of wood striking wood resounds through the training ground, the impact vibrating through my arms. My opponent does not relent, and neither do I. Each clash of our weapons is a silent conversation. Attack, defend, counter, respond. My breathing deepens, falling into the rhythm of battle, my focus narrowing to the present moment. Nothing exists beyond the next movement, the next decision. Beyond us, other samurai move in unison, some practicing in pairs, others in formations that mimic the shifting tides of war. In one corner of the field, archers release arrows in controlled volleys, their bows creaking before each practiced shot. Further still, mounted warriors guide their steeds through a series of maneuvers, blending horse and rider into a single entity. This field is not only a place of training, it is a crucible, shaping warriors for the battles that lie ahead. My opponent advances, pressing forward with precise strikes, testing my defenses. My muscles ache, but I welcome the sensation. It means I am sharpening, refining. I step back, then pivot, turning my defense into offense, forcing him to adjust. The moment stretches, a single breath, and then I move. My bakken arcs downward, and his meets it in a firm block. We break apart, returning to our original stances. A pause, a nod. We bow once more, acknowledging the respect earned in the exchange. As I step away, I take in the sight of my fellow samurai, each absorbed in their own trials. There is a quiet understanding between us all, an unspoken bond forged through the repetition of these drills. This is not battle, but it is preparation for one. Each strike, each movement is a prayer of sorts, a devotion to the way of the warrior, to the path we have chosen. The instructor signals the next stage of training. The drills shift from individual duels to group exercises. I take my place among my comrades as we form into ranks. Our leader barks an order, and we move as one. The clatter of bakken rings through the field as coordinated strikes and parries flow between us like waves upon the shore. We must anticipate not only our own actions, but those of our allies and opponents alike. Combat is not fought alone. The sun dips lower, casting a golden glow over the field. The sweat on my skin cools in the soft breeze, but my muscles remain taut, my mind sharp. The training ground, once filled with the sounds of exertion, slowly quiets as the final drill concludes. One by one, we bow and step away, breathless but composed. I sheath my bakken, rolling my shoulders as I make my way toward the edge of the field. There, a small wooden stand holds earthenware cups filled with cool water. I take one, feeling the rough texture of the clay against my fingertips before bringing it to my lips. The water is refreshing, carrying the faint taste of minerals from the well. I drink slowly, letting the moment settle over me, my heartbeat gradually returning to its steady rhythm. The other samurai gather, their voices hushed but content. There is no need for boastful words. Our efforts speak for themselves. Some tend to their weapons, checking for cracks in the wood. Others stretch, easing the stiffness from their limbs. A few remain in quiet contemplation, watching the setting sun. As the sky deepens into hues of amber and crimson, the instructor speaks. His words are measured, a reminder that every movement made today will shape our actions in battle. We listen, absorbing the weight of his message. This is not just training, it is a reaffirmation of who we are. The day's intensity fades into a quiet sense of fulfillment. My body aches, but it is the ache of progress, of discipline honed through repetition. I step away from the field, the scent of earth and sweat lingering as I make my way back toward the estate. The evening meal awaits, a time to replenish both body and spirit. As I walk, the low hum of voices carries through the cooling air, a reminder of the camaraderie we share. The lanterns of the main hall flicker to life in the distance, their warm glow guiding me forward. With one last glance back at the training field, I take a steady breath. Another day in the life of a samurai, another step upon the path. With quiet purpose, I continue on, ready for the evening gathering ahead. The next part of my day, intrigue of court politics. The grand hall of the castle hums with quiet energy, a space where words wield as much power as swords. I step into the room, my tabi-clad feet pressing softly against the polished wooden floor. The air is thick with the scent of burning incense, mingling with the faint traces of lacquered wood and the subtle aroma of tea, freshly poured into delicate porcelain cups. Paper lanterns cast a golden glow, their light flickering across the elegant tapestries that hang from the walls, depicting scenes of past battles and the glories of our daimyo's lineage. I keep my posture straight, measured. Here, even a glance carries meaning, and a misplaced step can alter one's fate. The court is gathered, daimyo, advisors, and ranking samurai, their voices hushed but purposeful, discussing the affairs of the land. I move slowly, deliberately, my fingers resting lightly on the hilt of my katana, not in aggression, but in the quiet assurance of one who is always prepared. My presence here is not just as a warrior but as an observer in the intricate game of politics, where loyalty and ambition are constantly tested. I bow deeply to my lord, who sits on an elevated dais, his expression unreadable beneath his ornate headpiece. At his side, his chief advisor, an older man with narrow eyes, speaks in a low, steady voice. He gestures towards a scroll spread before them, detailing a border dispute with a neighboring province. The conversation ebbs and flows like a gentle current, but beneath it lies the undercurrent of tension, the weight of decisions that will shape the future. I take my place among the assembled samurai, my presence acknowledged with slight nods from a few familiar faces. Some are veterans, their armor marked with the wear of countless campaigns, while others are younger, their eyes alight with untested ambition. To my right, a retainer from another household speaks in hushed tones with his lord, his voice barely above a whisper, yet I catch fragments of his words, mention of an alliance, the shifting loyalties of neighboring clans. I pretend not to hear, though the information is valuable. In this hall, knowledge is as much a weapon as steel. A servant moves gracefully through the room, carrying a tray with cups of warm tea. I accept mine with a slight nod, lifting the vessel to my lips. The liquid is smooth, grounding, a moment of calm amid the quiet maneuvering of the court. As I sip, I listen. This is not a place for rash action, but for careful observation. Who speaks with whom? Who remains silent when they should not? Who stands closer to the daimyo today than they did yesterday? The discussion turns to taxation, to the struggles of the peasants in the northernmost villages. The daimyo's voice is firm but measured. His duty is to rule wisely, to balance the needs of his people with the demands of his retainers. Some argue for higher levies to fund the castle's defenses, while others urge restraint, cautioning against unrest among the farmers. I watch my lord's expression, reading the slight furrow of his brow, the way his fingers tap thoughtfully against the lacquered wood of his seat. The hour drifts by like autumn leaves on a slow-moving stream. I remain silent, absorbing, considering. The delicate dance of words and gestures continues, shaping the course of the days to come. The daimyo's final decision is postponed. More information is needed. More envoys must be sent. But even in the absence of resolution, alliances have shifted. Unseen deals have been struck, and the weight of unspoken agreements lingers in the air. As the court session draws to a close, I bow once more, stepping back into the shadows of the hall's towering pillars. The murmurs soften as courtiers drift away, their thoughts undoubtedly turning to private meetings, to discussions behind closed doors where the true agreements will be forged. I do not linger. My place is on the battlefield, but to serve well in war, one must understand the currents of peace. As I step outside, the cool evening air greets me, a welcome contrast to the still warmth of the castle's interior. The sky is painted in hues of violet and deep blue, the first stars glimmering like distant lanterns in the heavens. My thoughts turn to the daimyo's command, to the shifting tides of power I have just witnessed. I walk towards the quiet gardens, seeking a moment to center myself before the evening's formal banquet, a gathering where conversation will continue, albeit with softer voices and carefully veiled intentions. The night's affairs are not yet concluded. The game of politics never truly ends, and as I move through the tranquil paths of the castle grounds, I prepare myself for the next act in this unending dance of power and loyalty. The next part of my day. Mysterious visitor. The wind carried the scent of pine and distant rain as I stood beneath the great wooden eaves of the daimyo's estate. The late afternoon light stretched long shadows across the stone pathway leading to the entrance hall. A hush had fallen over the grounds, save for the occasional rustling of leaves and the distant clang of steel as other warriors trained in the courtyard beyond. My hands rested lightly on the hilt of my katana, fingers tracing the familiar grooves in the wrapping. A summons had arrived. A stranger sought an audience with our lord, an unknown traveler who had appeared at the gate with neither escort nor announcement. It was my duty to assess this visitor, to see if they were a threat, a messenger, or something else entirely. I stepped forward, my sandals pressing softly into the polished wooden floor as I made my way to the entrance hall. The space was dimly lit, the lanterns casting a golden glow against the smooth lacquered walls. At the far end, just beyond the threshold, a lone figure stood motionless, draped in a deep blue traveling cloak. The visitor carried themselves with an unmistakable poise. Their hat, a woven casa, was pulled low, obscuring much of their face. A sword rested at their hip, sheathed in black lacquer. Despite their composed stance, the air around them felt taut, charged with the weight of something unsaid. With deliberate calm, I stepped forward, inclining my head slightly in acknowledgement. "You have come unannounced," I said, my voice even. "State your name and purpose." A pause. The visitor reached up, gloved fingers brushing against the brim of their hat before lifting it slightly. Beneath, a pair of steady, dark eyes met mine. There was no hesitation, no flicker of fear or arrogance, only measured stillness. "I bring a message," the visitor said, their voice low yet clear, one that must be delivered in private. I studied them carefully, noting the faint dust upon their cloak, the wear of long travel upon their boots. No insignia marked them as belonging to any rival faction, nor did they bear the mannerisms of a common bandit or mercenary. Still, caution was required. "This estate is under the protection of my lord," I said. "No one gains entry without due cause." The visitor did not move, nor did their expression shift. Instead, they reached slowly into their sleeve, withdrawing a small, folded parchment. They held it out with both hands, a gesture of respect. The paper was thick, bearing the faint trace of an embossed seal. I took it carefully, fingers brushing over the wax sigil. The emblem was familiar, though unexpected. A crest not seen in these lands for years. My grip tightened slightly. This was no ordinary traveler. A quiet breath passed between us, an unspoken understanding settling in the air. "You will wait here," I said, tucking the message into my sleeve. "I will speak with the Daimyo." The visitor offered a slow nod and stepped back, hands resting lightly in front of them. No further words were exchanged. I turned, moving toward the interior chambers where my lord resided. Each step I took echoed against the wooden floors, the weight of the moment settling upon my shoulders. The paper within my sleeve seemed heavier than it was, its contents unknown yet undeniably significant. As I approached the sliding doors leading to the daimyo's chamber, the air around me felt thick with unspoken possibilities. Was this message a warning, a plea, a challenge? The faint sound of murmured voices reached my ears as I neared. The daimyo was not alone. His trusted advisors sat in quiet discussion, their tones hushed yet urgent. I paused at the threshold, taking a measured breath before kneeling and tapping twice upon the wooden frame. "My lord," I called, my voice steady. "A visitor has arrived. They bring a message of importance." The voices within stilled. A pause, then the soft rustle of silk as my lord shifted within the chamber. "Enter." Sliding the door open, I stepped inside, bowing low before rising to present the parchment. The daimyo's keen eyes flickered with interest as he accepted it, breaking the seal with quiet precision. The room fell into a hush as his gaze moved across the words, his expression unreadable. Outside, beyond the wooden walls, the evening air was cooling, the scent of rain growing stronger. The mysterious visitor remained in the entrance hall, their presence a quiet enigma waiting to be unraveled. And with that, the night deepened, carrying with it the weight of whatever fate had just been set into motion. As the daimyo reads the letter, tension lingers in the air. Whatever message the visitor carried, it was enough to shift the course of the evening. The samurai prepares to remain vigilant, aware that the night may hold more than just quiet contemplation. The next part of my day. Dinner Banquet. The great hall was dimly lit by lanterns, their soft glow flickering against the lacquered wood of the long dining table. The scent of freshly steamed rice, seared fish, and delicately seasoned vegetables drifted through the air, mingling with the faint aroma of incense that curled from a small brazier at the far end of the room. The murmur of voices ebbed and flowed, punctuated by the occasional clink of ceramic cups and the gentle rustle of silk robes shifting as guests adjusted their seated positions on the tatami floor. I took my place near the end of the table, as was customary for a samurai of my standing. Before me, a carefully arranged meal rested on a lacquered tray. A small dish of pickled vegetables, a bowl of miso soup, slices of sashimi artfully arranged upon a leaf, and a modest serving of rice. Beside it, a small ceramic cup waited to be filled with sake, its smooth surface cool beneath my fingertips. The daimyo sat at the head of the table, his expression inscrutable as he listened to the quiet conversation unfolding around him. The room held an air of subdued formality, yet there was a tension beneath the surface, a subtle current of unease that had settled over the gathering like an unseen mist. The arrival of the mysterious visitor earlier that day had not been forgotten, and though no one spoke of it directly, the weight of the unknown lingered in the space between words. The soft strains of a shamisen drifted from the far corner of the room, where a musician plucked at the strings with practiced grace. The melody was slow and deliberate, each note carrying with it the quiet dignity of the evening. Servants moved with fluid efficiency, their steps barely more than whispers as they refilled cups and replenished dishes. I accepted a pour of warm sake with a polite nod, the liquid filling my cup with a muted splash. I lifted the cup to my lips, inhaling the faint, rice-sweet aroma before taking a careful sip. The warmth spread through me, a subtle contrast to the cool evening air seeping in through the wooden slats of the sliding doors. Across the table, Voices wove together in measured tones, discussions of recent disputes between villages, the upcoming grain harvest, and the state of the roads leading to the capital. Yet even as these conversations unfolded, I remained watchful, my gaze flickering subtly to the corners of the room, the entrances, the expressions of those seated nearby. The visitor had not been invited to the banquet, but his presence still loomed over the gathering. The daimyo, ever composed, gave no indication of his thoughts, though I knew he would not take the matter lightly. Every guest at this table had sworn loyalty to him, yet loyalty was a fragile thing in times of uncertainty. A servant placed a new dish before me, grilled eel, its surface glistening with a sheen of sweet soy glaze. I picked up my chopsticks, selecting a small piece and bringing it to my lips. The flavors were rich yet delicate, each bite a reminder of the refinement that marked the daimyo's household. This was no battlefield, yet the discipline of restraint, of careful movements and unspoken vigilance was much the same. The meal continued in this slow, deliberate manner, each course a rhythm in the evening's quiet performance. Cups were refilled, dishes cleared, conversations winding and shifting like the smoke from the brazier. The night deepened, and with it, the unease that coiled at the edge of my thoughts. The visitor had come with questions, and soon we would need answers. As the final course was cleared and the guests prepared to take their leave, I remained seated for a moment longer, my gaze settling upon the daimyo's composed expression. Tomorrow, I would seek clarity. Tonight, I would remain watchful. The flickering lanterns cast shifting shadows along the walls, and beyond them, the world waited in quiet uncertainty. The next part of my day, meditation of a warrior. The night air is cool as I step out into the quiet garden. The soft glow of lanterns casts flickering patterns across the worn stones of the path, their golden light reflecting in the gentle ripples of the koi pond. A breath of wind stirs the leaves of the sakura trees, their delicate petals trembling in the hush of the evening. I inhale deeply, allowing the stillness of the garden to settle within me. After the structured formality of the dinner banquet, I welcome this solitude. The murmur of conversation, the clink of porcelain cups, the measured words exchanged at the daimyo's table, all of it fades into the background as I turn my focus inward. Here, beneath the vast sky and within the embrace of nature, I can let go of the day's weight and return to the center of myself. I walk slowly toward the wooden meditation platform near the pond, my sandaled feet barely making a sound upon the earth. Each step is deliberate. I feel the texture of the ground beneath me, the slight unevenness of the stone path, the way the wood of the platform holds a lingering warmth from the day's sun. All is as it should be. Lowering myself into a kneeling position, I rest my hands upon my thighs. My posture is upright, but not rigid. There is a balance in all things, strength and softness, discipline and serenity. I close my eyes, allowing my breathing to guide me into stillness. The breath is the foundation. I follow its rhythm, slow and steady, as it moves in through my nose and out through my lips. With each exhale, I release the tensions lingering in my shoulders, in my arms, in my very core. My heartbeat slows. The world around me does not disappear, but rather, it sharpens into clarity. I hear the distant call of a night bird, the rustling of bamboo as it bends with the breeze. The water in the pond laps gently against the edge of the stones, and the faint plop of a koi surfacing reaches my ears. The sounds are neither distractions nor intrusions. They simply exist, as I do, in this moment. Thoughts drift in and out like waves upon the shore. I acknowledge them without attachment. The daimyo's words from earlier in the evening still echo in my mind, the discussion of politics and strategy lingering at the edges of my awareness. I let them pass like fallen leaves upon a stream, neither grasping nor resisting. My mind turns instead to the tenets of Bushido, the way of the warrior. Rectitude, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, loyalty. These principles shape my existence, guiding my every action. In the stillness of meditation, I reflect upon them not as abstract ideals, but as the very breath of my being. Have I acted with true honor today? Have I served with unwavering loyalty? I search my heart, not with doubt, but with the earnest desire to refine my spirit as I would a blade. The path of the warrior is not merely one of the body, it is a lifelong discipline of mind and soul. A deeper sense of calm settles over me, The weight of the day dissipates, leaving only the quiet certainty of the present moment. The world, with all its complexities and obligations, will continue to turn. Battles will come and go, alliances will shift like sand in the wind. But here, now, beneath the vast and endless sky, there is only the stillness, the breath, and the unwavering spirit within. I slowly open my eyes. The garden remains as it was, untouched by time. The moon has risen higher, its silver light casting long shadows upon the ground. My mind is clear, my heart steady. Rising with measured grace, I bow toward the pond, toward the earth, toward the silent sky. The night is deepening, and soon it will be time to stand watch. With one last look at the tranquil waters, I turn and step back toward the path, my spirit quiet, my purpose resolute. The next part of my day, the night watch. The night air is crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and damp earth. The moon hangs low in the sky, casting a silver glow over the estate's courtyard. I step forward, the soft rustling of my hakama the only sound against the stillness. The gentle flicker of lanterns lining the wooden walkways cast shifting shadows upon the polished boards. Tonight, I stand watch. I begin my slow circuit along the outer walk, my footsteps light, deliberate. The estate is quiet, its inhabitants resting behind shoji walls. A breeze moves through the trees, rustling the leaves like whispered voices. I listen, attuning myself to the sounds of the night, the occasional creak of wood settling, the distant hoot of an owl, the rhythmic croaking of frogs by the garden's pond. Each sound, familiar and expected, reassures me that all is as it should be. My hand rests lightly on the hilt of my katana. It is not out of fear, but habit. A samurai must always be ready, even in moments of tranquility. Yet there is something sacred about the stillness of the night, something that calls for quiet contemplation. I exhale slowly, feeling the tension in my shoulders release. As I near the far end of the courtyard, I pause beneath the towering form of the great maple. Its branches stretch wide, leaves shifting softly in the night wind. The moonlight filters through, dappling the ground in silver patches. Here, at this quiet hour, the world feels suspended between moments, neither fully awake nor entirely at rest. I turn my gaze to the landscape beyond the estate walls. The darkened fields stretch far, fading into the silhouette of distant mountains. There are no torches moving in the distance, no travelers upon the road. Still, I remain vigilant, scanning the horizon for any flicker of movement, any change in the pattern of the night. Moving once more, I step onto the covered walkway that leads toward the inner garden. The koi pond shimmers under the moon's reflection, its surface disturbed only by the occasional ripple. The scent of damp stone and moss mingles with the faint, lingering aroma of cherry blossoms. I pause at the edge of the veranda, watching the fish glide just beneath the water's surface, their movements slow and graceful. In the quiet of the night, memories surface unbidden. I think of my training as a boy, standing in this very courtyard under the watchful gaze of my master, the same stones beneath my feet, the same wind through the trees. I recall the weight of a wooden practice sword in my hands, the measured breath of countless drills beneath the rising sun. Those days feel distant now, but their lessons remain with me. Discipline, patience, the ever-present awareness of one's surroundings. A sound stirs me from my thoughts, a faint rustle beyond the walls. My body tenses, senses sharpening. I listen, waiting. A heartbeat, then another. But the sound does not return. Likely a stray fox nosing through fallen leaves. I allow my grip on my sword to ease. I resume my path, circling the courtyard once more. The lamps flicker, their glow steady. The estate remains still, untouched by disturbance. I find peace in this quiet vigilance, in the rhythm of my watch. The night is long, but I do not mind. In this solitude, there is a kind of harmony, a stillness that allows for reflection, for understanding. As the hours pass, the sky begins to shift. The deep black of night lightens, touched by the first traces of dawn's approach. Soon, the birds will stir, their morning songs announcing the arrival of another day. My watch is nearly done. I make my way back toward the inner halls, my steps unhurried. The estate remains undisturbed, safe beneath the last veil of night. As I step through the wooden threshold, I allow myself a final glance at the courtyard, at the silvered leaves and the still waters of the pond. The night has kept its peace. With that, I prepare to pass my watch to the next, stepping into the dim halls as the sky outside begins its slow transformation toward morning. The next part of my day, the silent conversation with a fellow warrior. The courtyard is quiet, bathed in the dim silver glow of the moon. The air carries the faint scent of pine and damp earth, a reminder of the light rain that had fallen earlier in the evening. I step onto the wooden ngungawa that lines the courtyard, my sandals brushing against the smooth grain of the planks. A lantern flickers gently nearby, its flame swaying in the breeze like a meditative breath. My fellow warrior sits on a stone bench beneath the low branches of a cherry tree, his armor set aside, his sword resting against the wooden railing. He does not look up immediately, but instead lets out a long breath, as though exhaling the burdens of the day. I cross the courtyard slowly, my own steps measured, my own breath steady, as I settle onto the bench beside him. The night is calm, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the faint rustling of leaves. For a time, we say nothing. Silence is not uncomfortable between those who have walked the same path, fought in the same battles, and endured the same hardships. There is a peace in knowing that words are not always necessary. The weight of our shared experiences sits between us, tangible and understood. Eventually, he speaks. It has been some time since we last sat like this. I nod, gazing toward the pond in the center of the courtyard, where koi fish drift lazily beneath the moon's reflection. Too long, I agree. The days have been filled with duty. He lets out a quiet chuckle, a sound more of resignation than mirth. Duty, he repeats, rolling the word on his tongue as though tasting its many meanings. Do you ever wonder if we were meant for something else? I turn my gaze to him, studying his face in the lantern's glow. He has seen many seasons of war, though his expression still carries the quiet discipline of a warrior who refuses to let the world erode him. There is honor in duty, I reply after a moment. It is the path we have chosen. He nods, but does not immediately respond. Instead, he picks up a small cup of sake from the low wooden table beside him and hands me another. I take it with both hands, feeling the cool ceramic against my palms. We drink in silence, letting the warmth of the sake spread through us. Do you ever think of those we have lost? He asks, his voice quieter now, almost lost to the night breeze. I lower my cup, watching the ripples in the pond. I do, I admit, every day. He sighs, rubbing a hand over his face. I see them sometimes, in dreams, their faces, their voices. He exhales slowly. Sometimes I wonder if they still walk with us. I look toward the darkened corridors of the estate, where the rest of the household sleeps, unaware of the two warriors sharing quiet burdens beneath the night sky. Perhaps they do, I say at last. Perhaps they live in the lessons they taught us, in the way we wield our swords, in the way we carry on. He is quiet for a long while, then nods. That is a comforting thought. We sit like this for some time, letting the night envelop us, letting the weight of unspoken words rest between us without demand. There is no need to rush, no need to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. The bond between warriors is not in spoken confessions, but in the shared understanding of what it means to walk this path. The wind shifts, carrying with it the faint scent of rain on the horizon. My companion finishes his drink, sets the cup down with deliberate care and stands. Another day begins soon, he murmurs. We should rest. I nod, rising to my feet as well. We do not embrace, do not offer parting words beyond a simple nod. But as we walk back toward the dimly lit halls of the estate, I know that the conversation, silent as much as spoken, has been understood. The night lingers as I return to my quarters, my mind carrying the echoes of our talk. And as I set my sword beside my bedding and lower myself onto the tatami mat, I find a rare moment of ease. The burdens we carry are lighter when shared, even if only in the hush of a quiet courtyard beneath a watchful moon. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new duties, but for now, I let sleep take me, knowing that I do not walk this path alone. The next part of my day, the Bushido Code. The room is dimly lit, bathed in the amber glow of a single lantern, its flame flickering gently as the night air stirs. I sit cross-legged upon the woven tatami mat, the faint scent of aged wood and ink drifting through my quarters. Outside, the distant chirping of crickets blends with the rhythmic rustling of bamboo, a symphony of nature that cradles the quietude of my thoughts. Before me, a a scroll lies unrolled, its careful calligraphy marking the tenets of Bushido, the way of the warrior. I inhale slowly, feeling the stillness settle within me, the disciplined breath of one who has trained their spirit as much as their blade. I reach for my ink brush, dipping it into the well of black ink beside me, and draw the first character onto a fresh sheet of parchment. The bristles glide across the surface, forming the elegant strokes of Gai, righteousness, the foundation of all virtue. A samurai acts not from personal gain, but from an unwavering sense of justice, even when the path is difficult. I reflect on this, my fingers tracing the dried calligraphy on the scroll before me. The weight of my choices, the conflicts I have encountered, all come back in quiet recollection. I move to the next tenet, the brush once again meeting the parchment. U, courage. The brushstroke is strong and deliberate, mirroring the resolve it represents. Courage is not mere fearlessness, but the ability to act despite fear. It is in battle, yes, but also in life's unseen trials. The words spoken when silence is easier, the step forward when retreat is safer. The ink dries swiftly under the lantern's warmth as I commit the word to both parchment and mind. Next comes Jin, benevolence. The line I paint is softer, the movement gentler. To wield a sword is to wield power, and to do so without kindness is to become no better than a common brigand. My master once told me that true strength is not found in destruction, but in protection. I recall the farmers I have aided, the villagers who look to my kind for shelter from lawlessness. My blade exists not for my own sake, but for those who cannot bear one. I pause, setting my brush aside to sip from a small cup of tea, its warmth spreading through my chest. A moment to reflect before I continue. The taste is earthy, grounding, like the principles I am etching onto the parchment. The quiet crackle of the lantern's wick fills the space between thoughts. Ray. Respect. My fingers tighten around the brush as I make the next inscription. It is respect that tempers strength, that allows a warrior to carry themselves with dignity rather than arrogance. It is the bow given to a worthy opponent, the measured words offered to a rival rather than the hasty swing of a blade. A samurai who lacks respect soon finds himself alone, his allies distant, his honor eroded. With careful motion, I inscribe Makoto, honesty. To speak falsehoods, to manipulate with words, is to dishonor oneself. Truth is the backbone of Bushido, the unspoken contract between warrior and world. I think of my own life, the moments where deception may have been simpler, yet was not chosen. Even in battle, a warrior's word must be ironclad, for trust once broken is near impossible to mend. The next word, Meiyo, honor. I pause before inscribing it, for it is perhaps the most sacred. A samurai lives and dies by their honor, the invisible force that dictates their every action. It is carried with every breath, protected with every choice. A warrior stripped of honor is but a shell, their existence reduced to mere survival rather than purpose. The brush moves with care, each stroke measured, deliberate, like the life it represents. Last chugi, loyalty. The ink glistens as I complete the character. The final pillar, the one that binds all others together. Loyalty to one's lord, one's comrades, one's ideals. A samurai's word is a vow, and that vow is upheld until death. I think of my daimyo, of the countless oaths sworn within these very walls. The weight of service is heavy, but it is one I bear willingly. I lean back, observing the parchment before me, each tenet standing bold in the lantern's glow. The ink has dried, the words now permanent, much like the principles they embody. Outside, the night deepens, the world slipping further into quiet slumber. My own body follows suit, my muscles relaxing, my mind settling into peace. The brush is rinsed, the parchment carefully set aside. I fold my hands in my lap, closing my eyes for a moment, letting the lessons of Bushido anchor me in the stillness. Tomorrow, the duties of a warrior will resume, the weight of the code carried forward into action. But for now, I allow the quiet to take me, my thoughts drifting like falling petals upon a still pond. The way of the warrior does not end when the blade is sheathed, nor when the sun sets. It continues, unwavering, through each breath, each heartbeat, each quiet moment of contemplation. The next part of my day, the arrival of war. The evening air is heavy, thick with a weight that cannot be seen, only felt. I sit in my chamber, my legs folded beneath me on the woven tatami mat. The room is still, save for the faint flicker of a single candle casting shadows along the wooden walls. Outside, the sky deepens into an ink-black canvas, streaked with the last embers of daylight. The wind stirs, rustling the trees beyond the shoji screen, carrying with it the distant scent of rain. A messenger arrived earlier in the afternoon, his presence alone a portent of change. He did not need to speak. The tension in his shoulders, the urgency in his breath, told me all I needed to know before he even parted his lips. War is coming. I have known for weeks that this moment was inevitable. Whispers in the corridors, hushed conversations among the elders, it has all led to this. And now, as I sit in the quiet of my chamber, I let the reality settle over me like a heavy cloak. My fingers trace the lacquered sheath of my katana resting before me, its weight both familiar and reassuring. It is more than a weapon. It is an extension of my soul, my duty, my very existence. I move with deliberate slowness, rising to my feet as I slide open the shoji door. The cool night air spills in, wrapping around me, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. In the distance, I can hear the faint murmurs of the other samurai preparing. Some gather in the courtyard, their voices low and measured. Others sit in silent meditation, grounding themselves before the storm ahead. I step out onto the wooden ongawa, the veranda that wraps around the estate. My tabi-clad feet press gently against the worn planks, each step producing a faint creak in the silence of the evening. The night sky stretches endlessly above me, stars scattered like grains of sand across the heavens. For a moment, I stand still, my hands resting at my sides, breathing in the vastness of the world before me. Beyond the estate walls, the hills roll into the distance, their silhouettes softened by the moonlight. Somewhere, out there, an enemy force is moving, their own warriors preparing as I am now. Do they feel the same weight pressing upon them? The same quiet trepidation mixed with unwavering resolve? I wonder if they, too, are gazing at the sky, searching for answers in the vast and endless dark. Returning to my chamber, I kneel once more, this time before my armor stand. Piece by piece, I inspect my equipment, my hands moving over the lacquered plates and silk cords. The scent of oiled leather and polished steel fills my nostrils. My movements are unhurried, methodical. There is no need for haste. Only precision, only intent. With quiet reverence, I prepare a small writing set, unrolling a sheet of rice paper. I dip the brush into the inkstone, the black liquid pooling at the tip before gliding across the page. I write with measured strokes, the kanji forming a letter to my family. If fate is unkind on the battlefield, these words will be all that remains of me. I do not allow fear to guide my hand. Instead, I write of duty, of honor, of the certainty that no matter the outcome, I have lived as a samurai should. When I am finished, I fold the letter with care, sealing it within a small wooden box. It will be left in trusted hands to be delivered only if necessary. There is no sadness in this act, only acceptance. The way of the warrior is not one of regret. I extinguish the candle, plunging the room into darkness save for the pale glow of moonlight through the shoji screen. I sit in silence, breathing deeply, grounding myself in the present. Tomorrow may bring chaos, but for now, there is only stillness. Outside, the distant sound of a temple bell drifts through the night air, a solemn reminder of time's passage. My body remains still, but my mind walks forward, stepping into the unknown of what is to come. And so, as the night deepens and the world hushes in anticipation, I surrender myself to rest, allowing the quiet to cradle me before the dawn. In the morning, war will come, but for now, I wait in the peace of the present moment. The next part of my day, the arrival of war. The evening air is heavy, thick with a weight that cannot be seen, only felt. I sit in my chamber, my legs folded beneath me on the woven tatami mat. The room is still, save for the faint flicker of a single candle casting shadows along the wooden walls. Outside, the sky deepens into an ink-black canvas, streaked with the last embers of daylight. The wind stirs, rustling the trees beyond the shoji screen, carrying with it the distant scent of rain. A messenger arrived earlier in the afternoon, his presence alone a portent of change. He did not need to speak. The tension in his shoulders, the urgency in his breath, told me all I needed to know before he even parted his lips. War is coming. I have known for weeks that this moment was inevitable. Whispers in the corridors, hushed conversations among the elders, it has all led to this. And now, as I sit in the quiet of my chamber, I let the reality settle over me like a heavy cloak. My fingers trace the lacquered sheath of my katana resting before me, its weight both familiar and reassuring. It is more than a weapon. It is an extension of my soul, my duty, my very existence. I move with deliberate slowness, rising to my feet as I slide open the shoji door. The cool night air spills in, wrapping around me, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. In the distance, I can hear the faint murmurs of the other samurai preparing. Some gather in the courtyard, their voices low and measured. Others sit in silent meditation, grounding themselves before the storm ahead. I step out onto the wooden ongawa, the veranda that wraps around the estate. My tabi-clad feet press gently against the worn planks, each step producing a faint creak in the silence of the evening. The night sky stretches endlessly above me, stars scattered like grains of sand across the heavens. For a moment, I stand still, my hands resting at my sides, breathing in the vastness of the world before me. Beyond the estate walls, the hills roll into the distance, their silhouettes softened by the moonlight. Somewhere, out there, an enemy force is moving, their own warriors preparing as I am now. Do they feel the same weight pressing upon them? The same quiet trepidation mixed with unwavering resolve? I wonder if they, too, are gazing at the sky, searching for answers in the vast and endless dark. Returning to my chamber, I kneel once more, this time before my armor stand. Piece by piece, I inspect my equipment, my hands moving over the lacquered plates and silk cords. The scent of oiled leather and polished steel fills my nostrils. My movements are unhurried, methodical. There is no need for haste, only precision, only intent. With quiet reverence, I prepare a small writing set, unrolling a sheet of rice paper. I dip the brush into the inkstone, the black liquid pooling at the tip before gliding across the page. I write with measured strokes, the kanji forming a letter to my family. If fate is unkind on the battlefield, these words will be all that remains of me. I do not allow fear to guide my hand. Instead, I write of duty, of honor, of the certainty that no matter the outcome, I have lived as a samurai should. When I am finished, I fold the letter with care, sealing it within a small wooden box. It will be left in trusted hands to be delivered only if necessary. There is no sadness in this act, only acceptance. The way of the warrior is not one of regret. I extinguish the candle, plunging the room into darkness save for the pale glow of moonlight through the shoji screen. I sit in silence, breathing deeply, grounding myself in the present. Tomorrow may bring chaos, but for now, there is only stillness. Outside, the distant sound of a temple bell drifts through the night air, a solemn reminder of time's passage. My body remains still, but my mind walks forward, stepping into the unknown of what is to come. And so, as the night deepens and the world hushes in anticipation, I surrender myself to rest, allowing the quiet to cradle me before the dawn. In the morning, war will come, but for now, I wait in the peace of the present moment. The next part of my day, the battle and aftermath. The battlefield is shrouded in the thick mist of dawn, the air cool and damp as I tighten my grip on the hilt of my sword. Around me, the assembled warriors stand in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The banners of our clan flutter gently in the faint morning breeze, their colors muted in the dim light. The earth beneath my feet is firm, still untouched by the chaos that is to come. My breathing is steady, measured. The weight of my armor is familiar, a second skin that has accompanied me through years of training and discipline. I roll my shoulders, easing the stiffness from the long hours of stillness. A distant horn sounds, its low call drifting across the valley. A signal. Slowly, our formation begins to move, each footstep a quiet drumbeat against the soil. I hear the rustling of armor, the creak of leather straps, the faint whisper of drawn steel. The scent of damp grass and cold iron fills my nostrils. We advance step by step toward the waiting line of our adversaries. Their figures emerge through the mist, dark shapes in the pale dawn. There is no shouting, no sudden charge, only the steady, inevitable closing of distance. Time slows, my senses sharpening. The grip of my sword feels firm and sure. Then, the clash. Swords meet with a ringing chorus, the air alive with the sound of metal striking metal. I move instinctively, each motion a practiced flow of defense and counterattack. I parry a strike, feeling the shudder travel up my arm, and return the motion with precision. Around me, warriors engage in the deadly dance, their breaths sharp, their movements deliberate. Dust rises as feet shift and stumble. The scent of sweat and blood begins to taint the morning air. Somewhere, a cry of pain cuts through the chaos, but I do not turn to see. My world narrows to the opponent before me. Their blade arcs toward me, and I step aside, redirecting the force. My own strike follows, clean, controlled. The moments blur together. I am aware of the weight of my sword, the rhythm of each movement, the steady exertion of my muscles. The world is reduced to motion, sound, and the cold calculation of survival. And then, as suddenly as it began, the battle begins to fade. The enemy falters, their lines breaking. Some flee, others drop their weapons in surrender. The ringing of steel diminishes, leaving only the heavy breathing of those who remain standing. I exhale, the tension slowly leaving my body. The battlefield is quiet now, the air thick with the scent of churned earth and sweat. The morning mist, once untouched, now hangs low over the fallen. I step forward, my boots sinking slightly into the damp soil. The aftermath is solemn. Warriors move through the field, tending to the wounded, offering final moments of mercy where needed. The sun begins to rise, casting its golden light upon the scene, illuminating the stillness. I clean my blade with slow, deliberate movements, wiping away the evidence of the struggle. The weight of the battle lingers in my limbs, not just from exertion, but from the understanding of its cost. I look toward the horizon, where the sky is soft with the first warmth of day. Another battle survived, another dawn to greet. With a quiet breath I turn, beginning the slow walk back to camp, where the fires still burn and the next chapter of this journey awaits. The next part of my day, the return to peace. The sun has long since dipped behind the horizon, and a soft, violet twilight has settled over the estate. My steps, slow and deliberate, echo in the quiet corridors of the estate. It is a familiar sound, one that has greeted me many times before, but tonight it seems more comforting than usual. The battle, with its rush of tension, its clamor, its fervor, is now but a fading memory, a storm that has passed, leaving calm in its wake. I slide my sandals off as I enter the hall. The floorboards are cool beneath my bare feet, a welcome sensation after the weight of the armor. My robes, once stiff and pressed, now move easily with me, flowing softly with each step. The soft glow of lanterns hanging from the rafters fills the hallway with gentle, flickering light, their warmth casting long shadows on the walls. I pause for a moment in the quiet space, letting the silence settle around me like a thick blanket. It is an emptiness that holds no fear or discomfort, but instead invites reflection. The world outside is still. The air carries the faint scent of pine from the forest surrounding the estate and the sweet, lingering fragrance of incense burning in the family shrine. I inhale deeply, the scents drawing me in, grounding me to the earth beneath my feet. The faint hum of cicadas drifts in through the open window, mingling with the distant murmur of a stream that runs along the edge of the property. In the silence of the house, the soft rustle of leaves is the loudest thing to reach my ears, a reminder that the world outside continues to turn, even when the day's demands have subsided. I move toward the small garden behind the house, a quiet retreat I have often sought in times of reflection. The garden is bathed in moonlight now, the stones cool and smooth beneath my feet as I step carefully into the mossy courtyard. The moon casts an ethereal glow on the koi pond, its surface reflecting the pale light like a mirror, ripples barely disturbing its peaceful state. I watch as the fish glide beneath the water, their movements slow, deliberate, and graceful. The sound of the water lapping against the rocks brings a sense of harmony to the night, a rhythm that matches the beat of my own heart. I sit by the edge of the pond, folding my legs beneath me, my back straight but relaxed. The air is crisp but not cold, and it carries the scents of the earth, damp, cool, and alive. My fingers gently trace the surface of the water, stirring the koi as they brush against my skin. The ripples grow wider, expanding slowly like thoughts in my mind, drifting outward, gentle and unhurried. A gentle breeze picks up, rustling the bamboo leaves that line the edges of the garden, their soft clattering blending with the ambient sounds of the night. The wind carries with it the faintest hint of wildflowers, their perfume mingling with the earthiness of the evening. I close my eyes for a moment, allowing myself to be enveloped by the peace of the moment. The stress, the weight, the violence of the battle. All of it feels as though it is being carried away by the breeze, leaving only stillness behind. In the distance, I hear the faint chime of a temple bell, its sound drifting across the land, reverberating softly through the trees. It is a call to reflection, to rest, to the continuity of life beyond the war and the strife. I take in a slow breath, my body rising with the gentle inhale, the quiet exhale falling from my lips like a sigh of relief. The tension in my shoulders, which I had carried all day, slowly melts away, leaving only tranquility in its place. The night is peaceful now. But even in the silence, there is a recognition that this peace is fragile. It is not something to be taken for granted, not something that will last forever. Tomorrow, there will be duties, there will be obligations, and there will be another day to face. But for now, there is only this moment, this quiet reflection in the stillness of the estate, the moon overhead, the soft murmur of the wind, the subtle song of nature unfolding in the garden. I stand from the stone bench by the pond, my legs stretching as I rise, my feet pressing softly into the mossy earth. The air feels fresh and new against my skin, a gentle reminder that life continues in its own rhythm, unhurried, unbroken, even when our days are filled with conflict and uncertainty. I turn back toward the house, my steps lighter now, not burdened by the weight of battle, but rather filled with the sense of having found my center again. As I enter the house, I hear the faint sound of servants preparing the evening meal, their quiet chatter a soft hum in the background. It is not an urgent sound, but rather one that signals the return to daily life, to the simple acts of eating, resting, and preparing for the next day. The scent of food wafts from the kitchen, a reminder of the comfort found in familiar routines. I move toward my chambers, the cool wood of the sliding door sliding open with ease, the soft light of the lanterns casting a warm glow in the room. The tatami mats beneath my feet are soft, their texture comforting after the strain of the day. I remove my robes, folding them carefully, placing them neatly on the low wooden chest. There is something peaceful in the simplicity of these actions, the small, deliberate movements that mark the transition from the day's duties to the quiet of night. Sitting on the edge of my futon, I allow my hands to rest in my lap. The world outside is still, and for a moment I simply listen to the sound of my own breathing, the rise and fall of my chest, the steady rhythm of my heart. It is a sound that is not unfamiliar, yet tonight it feels like a gentle reminder of the peace that I have found. The lanterns burn low, their flickering light growing dimmer as the night deepens. The room grows darker and the air becomes cooler, but the peace within me remains. I lie back on the futon, pulling the covers close around me, my body sinking into the warmth of the bedding. The world is quiet now, and the sleep that comes is not one of exhaustion, but of contentment. A deep, restful sleep that carries me into the next day, where I will awaken once more to the rhythms of duty, of life, and of peace. In the stillness of the night, there is no more need for words, only the quiet continuation of life, as gentle as the ripples on the pond, as enduring as the moonlight above. The world is at rest, and so am I.